Okay, I will call to order the Tuesday, April 16th meeting of the Town of Corte Madera Regular Town Council. We begin with roll call, please.
Councilmember Bailey.
Here.
Councilmember Beckman.
Here.
Councilmember Kuhnhart.
Here.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Here.
Mayor Ravazio.
Here. Can you join me in the salute to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I will ask you also to join me in wishing our town manager, Todd Cusimano, happy birthday. Todd, happy birthday. Thank you so much. And he came to the meeting anyway, right? Thank you. Happy birthday, Todd. Okay, open time for public comment. And at this time, any member of the public may address the council regarding any item not on the agenda. Speakers limited to 3 minutes. And again, these are for items not on the agenda. And if you can just give your name and address, that would be helpful too.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
My name's Robin Mahler, and I live in Larkspur, but many of you know that I have done a lot of work in Corte Madera. I've lived and been active in the Twin Cities since 1983, and I'm currently the lead of the Blue Rock Neighborhood Response Group. And I'd like to thank Corte Madera Council and staff for the great leadership and support they have shown the neighborhood response groups. So I'm very appreciative of that.
Thank
but
you.
I'm here
You're
today for something else. I'm representing Drive Clean Marin, which is a consortium of groups including the Climate Reality Project and Cool the Earth, and a dozen other nonprofits active in the area of climate change. Drive Clean Marin is supporting a campaign to reduce carbon emissions by driving electric vehicles. Recent studies show that 53% of the greenhouse gas emissions in the county are from driving. And right now is a watershed moment to dramatically reduce our emissions. Remember a few years ago when solar power became a familiar thing? EVs can be like that. Over the next few months, Drive Clean Marin is going to be coming to each town in Marin, offering to help you to support this transition. As you may know, San Anselmo just recently passed a landmark EV policy, electric vehicle policy. Their policy includes steps to help consumers make changes toward EVs and to change the composition of the town's vehicle fleet, including making an option of purchasing EV first. Today's EVs have high range and costs are dramatically down. There are now 39 plug-in models. Believe it or not, even in California, if you ask people how many kinds of EVs there are, most people can really only name one or two, but there are 39. So Drive Clean Marin is hosting a free community event to test drive EVs and learn how to make the switch to driving clean. This will be on Sunday, April 28th from 3 to 5 p.m. at the College of Marin's parking lot near the gym. If you want to find out more about it, you can go to drivecleanmarin.org/events, and you can see more information there. I'm here to ask the town of Corte Madera to act boldly and to show leadership in helping to save our planet for our kids and their kids, and consider adopting an EV policy. I look forward to working with you and to seeing you at the EV test drive event on April 28th, and you'll probably see me here again. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
29 seconds to go.
Anybody else? Open for public time. Okay. Thank you. And we will move on to presentations. We have two. First is going to be from Amy Willard from the Marin Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers regarding the Marin Municipal Water District fee and rate hike proposal. And we have 10 minutes allocated for this, so
Okay.
we'll keep it brief. Thank
And
you.
in that case, I will reconsider my plan here on the fly. Okay, so I'm here from the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers, and as I think most of you know, we're a nonpartisan advocate for sensible solutions. We're not a reflexively anti-tax group, and we try to work together with various agencies and districts for solutions that are fair to everybody, or as fair as close as we can to that. I'm here to ask for your help in sending a message to the water district that the plan that they have needs really to start over. And we really deserve a better plan. The one that's out there now is, I think, harmful to our cities and to the citizenry, as I will discuss here. The current proposal is basically reverse Robin Hood. The small homeowners pay more than their fair share. 78% of the new fee plan, which is a capital maintenance fee that is currently proposed to go on people's tax bills, 78% of that will be paid by homeowners who use 68% of the water. The commercial properties get off fairly light. There's a lot more also that is wrong with the current proposed rate and fee hike. Most importantly, it's based on meter size, not usage. And this is basically a fundamental not fixable flaw of the proposed plan without starting over again. What this does is it results in a huge percentage increase in the annual cost to low water users. Think of it like if PG&E was billing you based on your panel size, which they don't. And I haven't met a single person on the street who thinks that a meter-based charge is fair. It certainly isn't sensible to the common man. But now this capital maintenance fee is a patchwork of, let me back up a little. The charge is $163 for people with the smallest meters, which are 5/8 meters. Many people don't know where to find that. It's on your water bill. But 1 in 5, and they characterize that as the average amount, but it's not the average, it's the lowest amount. The one in 5 of the ratepayers have a 1-inch meter, which would give them a $409 charge. And there's a handful of people who have 1 1/4, 1.5-inch meters that are up in the $817 area. Because of this, the pushback on this, there's now a bunch of special concessions that are being bandied about to try to damp down the criticism. So, for example, the private fire lines, which serve some of your facilities and some of the schools and all of our big malls and office buildings and apartment buildings, they do not pay for the capital maintenance fee. But conversely, a lot of people who have 1-inch meters have 1-inch meters strictly because they have sprinklers in their house. So there's a fundamental unfairness within that. Putting it on the property bill means that renters who rent whole houses and normally get water bills won't be charged. There's a complex of problems here that result in something called non-proportionality. And proportionality is required under Proposition 218 for an agency like MMWD to avoid putting a proposal like this before voters for their approval. So another thing that's happening is that the capital management fee is bigger than it needs to be because MMWD decided to go cold turkey overnight and stop using bonds for financing their infrastructure. If they feel that they're getting a little high in their amount of bonds, they should do some kind of blended approach over time rather than jumping the rates up. It's going to be about a 30% jump on average in rates and higher for low water users. To do that all at once, it really puts a lot of stress on certain types of people. The rate and fee proposal was developed in the dark. There really wasn't any outreach to folks like you until the cake was already baked. And putting the capital management fee on the property tax bill has never been provided with a good explanation, but the general feeling is it's being done so that the water bill won't look even more scary than it's going to be otherwise. Your water bills also will be going up 4% a year for each of the next 4 years on top of this capital maintenance fee on the property tax. Runaway pensions, health insurance, and high salaries aren't even touched. So the concern to a city like Corte Madera is that ultimately the CMF on the tax bill crowds out future tax measures that you might need. Now, you just had one, so maybe you think this is not an issue for you, but this is a permanent tax, and it's going to keep going up, and sometimes it's going to step up largely at future points in time. Corte Madera, Larkspur schools may need some money, Tamalpais Union High School. parcel tax basically goes off a cliff in 4 years from now, and they will be in default if that happens. And there's a county-wide plan for some fire protection measures, all of which could get some serious competition from a big fee on the tax bill coming from the water district that nobody gets a chance to vote for, but they get to vote for all these other things. So cities like San Anselmo and San Rafael, which do have plans for upcoming tax measures, are pretty exercised about this. More importantly, this approach is not legal, and it should be stopped before they waste our money defending it, or worse yet, get away with it because no one challenges it. I don't have the time tonight to go into reading to you a statement that I have prepared that I will be rushing out of here to go over to MMWD to deliver tonight. But we at the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers have engaged a top water rate attorney in California to advise us on this. And he has explained why the plan that they have already floated is not legal as it is. It really, the county should not allow it to go on the tax bill because it is illegal. And that all of the changes that they're now considering tonight to mute the public criticism only make the problem worse because they're handing out special favors to different parties who have screamed the loudest. So we're offering a fair and positive alternative solution. But before I get there, I want to mention that there are in the back of the room here tonight some protest forms that people should fill out and mail in. This district has a bunch of transparency problems. We've served them with a cease and desist letter for multiple Brown Act violations. Their Prop 218 notice does not include a protest form. Instead, it includes 2-paragraph description of how you might complain. So I encourage you to find the protest form. So we at the Coalition of Sensible Taxpayers are offering a fair solution that's legal, which is the pretty basic, sensible one that the man on the street would propose, which is if they need some money for capital maintenance for their infrastructure, tie it to usage. And the way that you can legally do that is to come up with a cents per gallon or 1,000 gallons or whatever of water use that gets added onto your water bill. If you do that and it's not a tiered rate, it doesn't favor large customers over small customers or anything else, that's the gold standard for fairness and proportionality. We have put that forward. We put it forward before they mailed out the current Prop 218 notice, and we warned them if they mailed their Prop 218 notice as it is, they can't switch plans to a different plan, so they're locking themselves into a bad plan, and they went ahead and did it anyhow. How do we get a fair solution? We're applying some legal pressure. We really hope to have some public pressure, support from people within the community who send in those protest notices and show up at the meetings and let it be known what they don't like about the plan. And peer pressure. I'm hoping that there might be some peer pressure from councils like yours. It would be really valuable if you would join, for example, the Maria and IJ editorial board, which has called upon, and they're not a radical organization, they've called upon the water district to start over and come up with a fair plan through a transparent process. If you would send a nicely worded letter to your sister agency, it could make all the difference. This plan potentially hurts your city, it hurts your citizens, and we hope that you will give consideration to agendizing sending a letter. Thank you.
Thank you. And just as a reminder, this is not an action item. We are not taking any action on this tonight as a council. It's not on the agenda. But I will now ask if there are any questions from the council for Mimi, if you're willing to take questions.
Yes, I'm willing to. I'd be happy to take questions.
Do they have questions?
I have a question.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I take it you've Oh, sure. Are you
Sorry,
gonna
we're
do
going to
public?
start with the council and then we'll have public comment. Thank you. Sorry, I should have mentioned that.
I take it you've presented this already to the Public Utilities Commission, and I'm just curious have you received feedback from other governmental entities about this?
No, we haven't taken that route, but it's a great suggestion, Sloan, and I'll ask our council if that is something that we should consider doing.
Is that it? Anybody else have questions up here? No? Okay, then I will open it up for public comment. You can come up to the microphone and give your name, and if you want to make a comment, you may do so.
Can I just ask a question?
On the mic.
I need you to come up to the mic, and I need you to give your name. Am I allowed to take questions on presentations?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'm not even sure, so, okay. Thank you.
Tracy, you look hesitant. Were you in agreement with that answer?
I'm sorry, but this is a public meeting, so we need to make sure that everything's in the public record.
My name's Joan Frey, 472 Montecito. My question is just, is there going to be a vote on this, or is it like a done deal?
I'll let Mimi address that. It looks like she can.
Thank you for the question. So the way it works, if you're a water district or basically a utility, is that the citizenry doesn't get a vote because it's deemed to be an essential service. That said, if you kind of have a vote, which is your protest form, and if in the unlikely event that 50% of all the ratepayer addresses plus one turned in their protest forms, it would be rejected. That has been done in small towns. I don't think it's ever been done in a district as large as this. That said, people still should do it. The other options are to vote them out, which is difficult because we have incumbents who have been there. One of them is going on year number 26. I have heard some discussion possibly about term limit initiative. That might be the solution.
Thank you. If you have a question, I need you to come to the microphone and give your name. I'm sorry, it's a public meeting and we have to do this for public record. Thank you.
I'm Dorsey McTaggart from Corte Madera. I would like to make a statement, but I'd like a clarification from Mimi. Did you say that if over 50% submitted protests, it would be rejected? My understanding was that over 50%, if over 50% of the ratepayers submitted their protest, and that's 31,000 people, submitted their protest and completed the protest form properly, according to the way MMWD insists that it be done, so that it won't be rejected, that we would have some assurance that we would get our protest listened to. Isn't that true?
No, it would actually, the plan would fail.
Why?
You know what? We're getting off topic here. I'm sorry. If you have a comment,
Well,
I need to get back to our meeting. Okay. I'm sorry. You can talk to her afterwards. She'll be outside. You can meet her afterwards. But we need to stay on the agenda. And we gave MMWD 10 minutes last week, and I want to try to do the same for the other side. So thank you.
And thank you very much for providing the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Was there any other public comment on this topic? Okay. Thank you. We will then move on. We have a presentation from Police Chief Mike Norton on the Central Marin Police Authority, the always exciting annual statistics report.
I know you wait all year for this one.
I do. I always want to see where is
Do
the
you have
most
pictures, Mike?
accident-prone section of town. I think I know what it is, but I want to see if it's the same again.
Are we number one? Do we have more crooks?
So as you know, this is required by the municipal code that I kind of come through all the jurisdictions and give a report on traffic situation, accidents and citations. We've also over the years folded in a few crime statistics as well that you'll see as we go through this. Feel free, council members, to interrupt if you need any clarification, but I'll go through it kind of quick so you're not here all night looking at statistics. And the clicker doesn't work. Okay. Let's try it. I got it. I improvise. I think the space bar probably works, right? I'm just kind of close to. And the space bar doesn't work.
Gotta use the mouse.
And Rebecca's gone. We can't do anything. Oh,
Becca ran away.
The brains have left the room.
oh wait.
Boom.
Peter's
There we
got
go.
it. Peter's got it.
All right.
Peter, you're hired.
Thank you. Right off the bat, we had over 44,426 calls for service. Does this work? Oh, this doesn't work. That's good. Okay.
Oh, it's something.
There we
Is
go.
that you?
Peter's.
No. Go backwards. All right.
You can
Old
just-
school. So we had 44,426 calls for service. That was an increase of 13% for our total jurisdiction, which is kind of surprising because usually it stays about the same. In terms of Corte Madera, an increase for calls for service, your number's right there. That was an increase of 8% over last year. And when I go through this, these are statistics for calendar year 2008. And when I point things out, it'll be comparing it to calendar year 2007.
You mean 18 and 17?
Yes.
Probably.
Sorry, I'm a little flustered here. All my technology is failing. Can we go to the next slide, please? No surprise in terms of calls for service in our whole jurisdiction. The number two are still the town center and village here at the top. We actually saw an increase at town center of 26% and an increase of the village of 21%. Some of that can be, crime, accidents, things like that. A lot of it can also just be extra patrol. So if we have an uptick in crime, we tend to be more present, get out of our cars, walk around more, do some more drive-throughs, and that can generate calls for service as well. As you can see, the main thing that happens in all of Marin County, but especially in Central Marin, the two big things we do is a lot of traffic enforcement and a lot of extra patrol requests. And those can be for lots of different things. Mainly it's when citizens call us and are requesting specific extra patrols. Can I get the next slide? We can pretty much go through this. The big thing to point out is of all your calls for service in Corte Madera on the top 5, none of those are actual crimes, which is good. You have extra patrols, traffic stops, assist fire or medical calls where we help them out. Citizen assist can pretty much be anything where a citizen calls us. And then 911 hang-ups, we still get a ton of those, even though a lot of people are going away from landlines. Go to the next slide. So traffic stops. In Corte Madera, there was 1,299 traffic stops made last year, and that was an increase of 21%. So in all our jurisdictions, we've heard a lot of calls from citizens to have more traffic presence and more enforcement in their towns. So we tried to up that in 2018, and we're continuing that in 19. So you do have a 21% increase there. And you can kind of, by looking at when we do traffic stops, the bulk of it are really going to be between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. And then you see a spike with our night shift coming on from 7 p.m. to midnight. Oh, great. Thank you.
It just needed Rebecca in the room. That was
You abandoned me. So in terms of where we conduct traffic stops, bear in mind this is 24 hours a day where they're stopping people. And since Corte Madera does pretty much straddle Highway 101, we do have a lot of traffic and cars still coming and going in the middle of the night. So you see a lot of the traffic stops are pretty much occurring between right around the freeway. The one that jumps out that's a little different would be Tamalpais and Sanford. Those will almost 100% be daytime traffic stops. Reports are when we get a call for service and it ends up turning into a longer process. It could be your house was broken into, your car was burglarized, where an officer comes out and it's more than just a few minutes and they end up having to take a report. Those generally from the beginning to end take anywhere from 2 to 6 hours of our department's time. And in Corte Madera, there were 779 reports in 2008, and that was actually a decrease of 20%. So that's actually a good sign in terms of, it's usually a good indicator before we look at anything else about which way crime's trending. So major crimes, I'm going to get up and walk around just since the laser pointer doesn't work. Just to point a few things out. The big things, some good signs were aggravated assault, we had 7 of those. It went down to 1 in 2008. And residential burglaries, that's where someone's house gets broken into. We had 20 of those in 2007, and we had 2. Sorry, I keep going. 2017, we had 2 in 2018. I'm obviously feeling younger than I am today, and I keep getting the years wrong. In terms of general larceny and theft, we had 192 of those, and it went down to 161 in 2018. And in vehicle thefts, that's where your car is actually stolen, we had 6. The year before, we had 19. So those are all pretty good trends. Some of the areas where it's trending upwards would be drug violations and DUI. Those are increases of 24 to 39 and 15 to 18 in DUI. Nothing too major. It's mainly more of our officers being better trained on to handle that. We are seeing more drug violations and DUIs in all our jurisdictions. And our officers are being more vigilant about making arrests off of those. And in terms of theft breakdown, these are pretty good indicators because most of the crimes we have in our jurisdictions are property crimes and involve either bicycles or vehicles. In terms of unlocked vehicles, that's where someone left their car unlocked and someone goes through and takes something. Not all of those get reported to us, but those that did, we only had 14 reported in 2008. We had 48 the year before. Bicycle thefts went down to 17 from 27. And auto burglaries actually went down from 125 to 59. What we're seeing, though, is in 2019, a lot of those are starting to trend back up. So we're doing a lot of focus around our shopping centers, trying to do extra patrols and limit that. But it's a trend we're seeing all around the Bay Area, not just in Marin County. And nothing too major to look at here. Once again, village and town center generate the bulk of our reports. A lot of those are honestly vehicles related to, crimes related to vehicles or stolen bicycles. And then for the top actual crimes that occur, as you can see, number 1 are different types of burglaries, whether it's auto, commercial, residential. Commercial would be someone, it's an elevated form of shoplifting. It's if I were to go into, let's say, Nordstrom's and have some wire cutters with me to clip the security tags off. That would technically be a burglary and not just a shoplift. So it is a felony, so it is an arrestable offense. Obviously carries a bigger penalty. So moving more into traffic citations, this is our whole jurisdiction at a glance. Under the moving citations, you can see there are 2 spots where a rather high number were issued in Corte Madera, 220 Tamil Vista Boulevard and Tamil Vista and Warnham. That can be day and night. It's once again generated on citizen complaints. Tamil Vista is pretty much probably speed, but a lot of pedestrian violations. It's a mid-span crosswalk. And Tamil Vista and Warnham is, we have some pedestrian violations where people aren't stopping, but there's also kind of some illegal turns that occur there due to some signage. But once again, some of that could be night, some could be day. Probably the bulk of it is day. There's not a lot of parking enforcement in Corte Madera, unlike Larkspur and San Anselmo that have kind of a very designated downtown area with a lot of 2-hour parking that requires a lot of enforcement. Corte Madera doesn't quite have that. We do have spots, but the bulk of it is usually neighbors calling us and saying, there's a car blocking my driveway, or we see someone in a disabled person spot or something like that. And overall, throughout our whole jurisdiction, the number of moving and parking citations we issued was up 41%. So let's see. In terms of moving in Corte Madera, this section right here, that went up a small amount. That went up 6%. We issued 6% more citations. And with all our jurisdiction combined, where we issued about 2,500 moving citations, Corte Madera made up 25% of those, which is probably about 25 to 30% is about where it should be based on population size and things like that. And then finally, looking specific at Corte Madera, where's the top locations we issued citations, I can kind of attach a reason to each of these, more or less. Once again, 220 Tamil Vista, this first one. That's going to be crosswalk violations. The Tamil Vista at Warnham is going to be illegal turns.
And Madera at Tamil Vista is mainly going to be stop sign violations. Tam at Pixley will be a combination of speeding and crosswalk violations. And the last one, Tamalpais Drive at Highway 101, is pretty much people speeding over the overpass there, which has always been a problem. And then traffic collisions. So I told you about all the enforcement we do. And when we have an uptick in enforcement, you'd like to see the number of collisions actually decrease. That's what you're hoping to see. But what we actually saw in Corte Madera was an increase of about 10% in terms of total collisions. There was 239 traffic accidents in Corte Madera in 2008. 18. I wonder if I did this the whole time and saying that someone, no one corrected me. Because that was last week. I'll get it right for Larkspur. How's that? One thing I did notice is that Corte Madera Town Center had 50 total collisions. That was up 25%. So that accounted for about 5% total of the collisions we had. We do traditionally have a lot. If you look at our whole jurisdiction, the bulk of that is pretty much shopping centers. And when you look at the total number of accidents, 757 in our whole jurisdiction, and you look about how many actually involve someone being injured. You had 71 minor injuries. That could be a complaint of pain, a scrape, something like that, and 11 major injuries. Those are traditionally ones where they had to transport to the hospital. The bulk of our collisions are either low speed or in parking lots. And this one, 249 hit and run property damage only. Those are those ones that are super frustrating for people where you go shopping and then you come out and you realize someone's hit your car. It's technically a misdemeanor hit and run because no one left a note. If a note's left, it's not a crime, but if no note, then it's a hit and run property damage only. And we get a lot of those, almost one a day. And a lot of those do occur. Oh, thank you so much. In the Corte Madera shopping centers, just because they are rather big shopping centers. Once again, here's the breakdown of where the collisions occurred. The first two, like I said, are pretty much low speed, a lot of just hit and runs, the town center and village. And then you can see there's a pretty significant drop off in numbers after that. Tam Overpass, that's the overpass plus the feeders off the freeway. That's always been kind of a spot, but there was only 5 in 2018. And you can see some of the other locations. We get a lot of complaints and we do a lot of extra enforcement on Tamalpais for pedestrians. And there are 2 locations on there, Madera at Tam and Eastman and Tam, that combined had 7 accidents. Those are not necessarily a pedestrian or a bicyclist was hurt. That could be any type of collision. And most of them are vehicle on vehicle when it comes to all these places. And then finally in Corte Madera, there was 3 major injury accidents and 17 minor injuries. So for a total, out of your 239 collisions, 20 of those involved an injury. And let's see. And that is it for my presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any questions from the council for Chief Norton? Yeah, go ahead.
I do, but
Go ahead.
Chief, thank you. I'm curious whether the, first of all, I noticed that sort of drug arrests were separate from the DUIs, right? So you're making that distinction. Do you make any other sub-distinction in the drug arrests? Do you have any idea how many are related to sort of a general morass of drug abuse or cannabis in particular?
So I wasn't very clear, but the ones that said drug offenses, those were not DUIs. So DUI would include driving under the influence, whether it's alcohol, marijuana, prescription pills. So DUI was any of those.
Okay.
Drug offenses would be basically we contact someone who's under the influence of narcotics for the most part. And if they were driving, it'd be a DUI, but it's people walking around, maybe riding their bicycle. Actually, well, riding their bicycle could be a DUI.
And just because it's been an issue, we're here, is there any sense of if there is any issue with cannabis abuse?
Well, on looking at the statistics, we've seen an increase in DUIs from that since it's become more commonplace. We saw an uptick 10 years ago, but we've also seen it in the last year when it became legal across the board. But those drug offenses would not be possession of marijuana. Those would be all narcotics like methamphetamine or heroin or things like that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Go ahead.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Chief. Do you have any kind of takeaways for us that maybe wouldn't be apparent just through the numbers themselves?
No, I don't think so. I think the big thing is just, once again, these are 2018 statistics, and we're into April, and the trends we're seeing right now are and it comes in waves across the Bay Area, is we're just seeing a huge uptick everywhere on vehicle break-ins, and it's really indiscriminate now. People used to be kind of subtle. Now they're just kind of walking up and throwing a brick through a window just because, for any reason, and they sometimes aren't even seeing something to take. So we're focusing a lot of our effort on preventing that, as is everyone in the county. We're working with all the agencies in Marin to try and game plan this and work together. But you're going to probably see some more enforcement, but also some more education, because as long as people keep leaving things of value in their cars, these people are going to keep coming. And for the most part, when we do catch them, they are out of the county citizens. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chief. And by the way, we're all grateful and thank you to you for your service and the report and everything. Thank you, Mike. The question I have is in the major crimes slide. My takeaway from that slide was that it had decreased in virtually every category, and it was impressive. But my question is whether, if you had walked those trends back more than a year or two, and within context of 5 years or 10 years, how are we doing? And then the follow-up to that would be, I wouldn't mind in future years if you included in some of your statistical slides just a little better sense, not just how we compare to last year, but
historically,
in a bigger sense. That's all.
Okay.
The numbers are great.
I think 2017 was a bit of an uptick. So what we usually see, especially with crimes involving vehicles and bicycles, is it goes like this. You know, some years are worse, some are pretty quiet. This was a very quiet year in 2018. I see 2019 swinging back up. And usually what happens is it's kind of like the crime du jour. Some years it's just all bicycles, and then some years it's all vehicle-related crimes, and it just comes and goes. Bicycles, when we have a lot of those taken, it's usually people living in Marin that are, so we're able to kind of eradicate that a little better, because the bicycle thefts are happening usually when people are on foot. The vehicle break-ins are tougher. It's people coming from outside the county. If you live or park near the freeway, you're more susceptible to be to those. And we've arrested people that have property in their vehicles from earlier in the day they've stolen from San Jose. And San Jose's called us and go, wait, we got something here. Did you have a break-in? Yeah, an hour ago. Now they're in San Jose. They pretty much are driving through the whole Bay Area in the course of a day. It's pretty crazy. It didn't used to be like that when I first started, but it's just something we're dealing with more and more. But yeah, I'll work with the person who helps me put this together and see if we can spread it out. I'd kind of like to just cut down on the amount of numbers there and just maybe be a little more general, because I think that's all that people really need to see, not so much detail.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Jim, anything? Nope. Just one quick one. I know you got two members of the police council here, but is there anything we can be doing that you would like to see us be doing that we're not as a town? Or
No, not in Corte Madera. I think you're very responsive and proactive, and I enjoy working with Public Works. We work together a lot on the traffic issues, and it's a great relationship where I can reach out to your Public Works director and just go, hey, I think this is an issue based on we've had some collisions or we're seeing something, and they're very responsive, and we'll brainstorm together something to do, and it seems to get done really fast.
Great, thank you. And we have some experience in town management also in police. Okay, we're going to open it up for public comment on this. Is there any member of the public who would like to speak on this? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to the consent calendar, I believe. Yes. Purpose of the consent calendar is to group items together which are routine or have been discussed previously, do not require further discussion. They'll be approved by a single motion. Any member of the council, staff, or public may request removal of an item for discussion. Rescheduling will be at the discretion of the mayor and the town council. Is there anybody who would like to remove an item from the consent calendar? Or is there anyone who would like to make a motion asking for approval of the consent calendar?
I'd like to move items 4A through 4F.
Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Bailey.
Yes, but abstain from 4F, which is the minutes.
Councilmember Beckman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
Mayor Ravazia.
Yes. Item 5A, public hearing, adopting resolution number 17/2019, approving the proposed Central Marin Regional Pathways Gap Closure Project and approving the initial study and mitigated negative declaration for the gap closure project. Peter, is this you?
Brief introduction, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. RJ Suko, senior engineer, has been managing this project since he started, so he's going to handle, I think, the initial presentation, and then we have a consultant on board that has helped us with the MND, the mitigated negative deck, and I think she's also going to take a little bit of the discussion. But just by way of background, this is a project that we are in design. If you recall the acronym soup that we live in, this is the PA and ED phase, project approval and environmental determination. So we're not doing construction. We don't have any money for construction, but we're in that interim phase. And I think I'll turn it over to RJ at this point.
Thank you, Peter.
Great. Good evening, council members. I'm RJ Suko, senior engineer with Public Works, and I'm here along with Amy Skews-Cox, our environmental consultant. And we're here to provide an overview on the initial study and CEQA mitigated negative declaration for the Central Marin Regional Pathways Gap Closure Project. So as Peter mentioned, I'll be starting with a project overview, and then I'll hand it over to Amy for a overview on the CEQA compliance. So this project was initiated in 2017 after the town received $415,000 in active transportation program funds. Since then, several public workshops have occurred, including 2 presentations to the town's BPAC and 1 standalone public workshop, which occurred in February. So now looking at the monitors, here's a diagram of the region. You can see the project in purple with the circle around it. Let's see if I can get this. So right here, as you can see, it connects to several existing pathways, as well as several that are in development. The one in green is expected to start construction this summer. The yellow and the orange are in design development by County of Marin and Larkspur. So moving on, here we have a closer look at some of the project elements, and I'll go into those in more detail. But there's 5 main components. We have a Class 1 non-conforming path here on Warrenham Drive. We have a roundabout at Nellon, and Warrenham. We have a cycle track here on Nellon. We have a enhanced crossing here at Pfeiffer Avenue. And we have a connection between Pfeiffer Avenue and southbound Nellon proposed here. So before I go into each of them individually, it's very important to understand that the environmental document purposely addresses all the design variations. But at the same time, we do not have construction funding secured, and therefore, depending on the funding levels and priorities, there are flexibility to implement components and pieces, in the future as we get that fund. So here we have improvements to Warrenham Drive. As mentioned, this is an existing Class 1 path. One of the variations looks at moving the curb line out about 3 feet, which would allow it to be a compliant Class 1 path. This project could be implemented entirely independently of other components. Here's the continuation of that toward the east as you get to Redwood Highway. Here's another component that could also be implemented independently. It's an enhanced pedestrian crossing at Pfeiffer Avenue. What makes it different is the staggered crosswalk, and this allows pedestrians and bikes to cross 1 lane at a time, turn, face traffic, make eye contact, and then cross on the other side, which is a much safer condition than what we have now, which is a narrow refuge island in the middle. This island here is also widened, which provides more real estate to stand safely with bikes and peds, and then also it reduces the crossing distance between the 2 pedestrian facilities. So Nellon Avenue, the project is looking at a variation for a cycle track that is protected. And the term protected is because of, we have a row of parking here. You can see the hatching marks. And that provides an additional buffer in addition to the striping between the vehicle lane and the cycle track or the Class 4 bikeway. So this project would benefit, or this component would benefit from the improved enhancement to this ped crossing and also the roundabout or an improved crossing here at Warnham Drive. So we have the Warnham-Nellen roundabout. This component would really go hand in hand with the opening of Pfeiffer Avenue southbound onto Nellen Avenue. By introducing additional vehicles, that would increase the number of movements that you would have on Nellen, either west or east on Warnham Drive. And we'll take a closer look at that. So here's a diagram showing a lot of the current queuing of vehicles here on Tamil Vista Boulevard. I'm sure everyone here has experienced the long left turn queue. And from the modeling, the project team believes that by introducing this vehicular movement onto southbound Nellen, drivers will save about 1 to 2 minutes when there isn't a backup here on Redwood Highway. Here's a closer look at the connection from Pfeiffer to southbound Nellen. It's worth noting it's a one-way movement. Vehicles traveling north on Nellen would be looped around and U-turn back to Nellen Avenue.
Can I ask a clarifying question
Sure.
on that?
Sure.
Map right there, RJ. The new office building that's going in, right where that little random collection of cars is, where's their ingress and egress?
Currently, they have one up here. And I am trying to recall if they also maintain this one. If it is maintained, we were aware of this project, so we did put a condition that it could be removed. But I'd have to check on whether they're planning to keep this open as it's being built currently. So just giving a recap, the Warnham pathway can go independent. The Pfeiffer crossing also can be independent. The cycle track would really benefit from the improved crossing at Pfeiffer and an improved crossing or roundabout at Warnham. And the connection here from Pfeiffer to Nellen would necessitate a roundabout or a signal here at Warnham. And with that, I'll turn it over to Amy Skews-Cox to talk about CEQA compliance.
That's the pointer. And then that's this next forward and back. Okay, great. Here, I'll give you this. Good evening. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the CEQA process, the California Environmental Quality Act process that we went through for this project. Basically, RJ gave a really good explanation of the 5 components of the project, which we looked at all of those in the evaluation for the initial study. We looked at these 19 topics, which you, I'm sure, are very familiar with, having looked at EIRs and initial study checklists. So we looked at all of those topics and identified any potential impacts. And for those 2 impacts that we identified, we had mitigation measures. Those were the air emissions during construction, and we have a mitigation related to following the air district's standard sort of compliance measures for construction steps. And the second one was the potential impacts to trees, primarily along Warnham, where it wasn't trees on Warnham, but it was the actual trees on DMV property where the roots could be disrupted. So we had to have some protection measures for that. We got 2 letters and comments. It was the mitigated neg deck initial study was circulated for 30 days to the public. We got a letter from Marin Audubon and a letter from Caltrans. Caltrans was really pretty standard. It was just that if you're going to do any work in our right-of-way, let us know and get an encroachment permit. When Audubon expressed some concerns about the trees, even though there were some trees potentially impacted, especially along Nellen, which are going to have to be removed. There's some young eucalyptus in there that are not in the Caltrans right-of-way, but that would have to come out because of the road being shifted to the east. And they were concerned about that, and they were concerned about the mitigation measure for the trees on the DMV property, but it didn't warrant any change in the recommended mitigation. And then they were also concerned about the potential for piecemealing the project because they thought that this project was part of many other projects. But this project can literally stand on its own, so we really did not piecemeal it. It's really an independent project. I think RJ did a good job of explaining some of the other improvements that are proposed in the area. So tonight we're asking the council to take action to adopt a resolution and make the findings for all these different things in terms of the mitigating neg deck complying with CEQA and the impacts being mitigated and adequately analyzed. And there's no evidence of unmitigated impacts. So we'd like to ask that you make the findings, you approve the initial study and the mitigated neg deck, you adopt what's called the Mitigation Monitoring and Reporting Program, and you approve the project, and then you direct us to file what's called a Notice of Determination, which goes to the Office of Planning and Research and to the county clerk, and that sets the 30-day challenge period versus if you don't file the NOD, you have 180 days where it can be challenged. So those are all the steps. Thank you. Concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Questions from council members? Eli, looks like you have one.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few questions. So first, I'm curious, what is the net change in the number of parking spaces on Nellen?
I don't have a specific number, but we are currently there's parking on both sides of the street, and it's being reduced to basically half or close to half.
Okay. And then I noticed that Nellen you'll be able to go from Pfeiffer to Nellen, but not Nellen to Pfeiffer, and I was just curious what the rationale there is. Not questioning your judgment, just curious. So.
Mainly it's to address the left turn backlog, and we're not aware of an issue going the other direction. You have kind of a easier right turn to make that doesn't have a queue, but also the people coming off the freeway that want to go that direction west would come off at Pfeiffer and directly go to Lucky Drive.
Okay, cool. And then last question, do we know how the Tam Ridge residents might feel about losing the trees that are currently in between their views and the freeway?
We haven't heard specifically from any residents of the Tam Ridge Apartments, but I've looked at those trees. The trees are very young, very thin eucalyptus.
Okay.
They're not going to have a huge change from the existing condition in terms of what they're going to see on the freeway.
Okay. All right. Well.
Okay.
Thank you,
David.
Got a couple. RJ, did I understand you correctly saying that if the opening is made between Pfeiffer and Nellen, that a signal would be needed at Nellen and Warnham, or a roundabout, one or the other?
Yeah, we're looking at a roundabout option, but yeah, generally you would need assistance making that left turn.
And a stop sign wouldn't be good enough because it's a left turn.
Correct.
And it would be a lot of motion through the intersection.
There's too many cars coming and not enough space in between to make that that left turn movement on a frequent basis.
I've never seen a roundabout sort of right at the mouth of a overpass, and I was wondering if there's any concern about the temporary blindness of coming out of the shade into the light, and suddenly having an unexpected or somewhat unusual roundabout right there, and whether you'd thought about that.
Not specifically on the light dark, but there is a Peter's actually quite the roundabout guy, but
I know he is.
As you approach
it's
the
UCLA
roundabout,
thing,
you're actually coming off your straight paths. You're actually slowing down as you approach the roundabout to reduce speed.
There would be
deflection.
Would there be a yield sign or something like that?
Yes.
I noticed the pinpoints for.
Yeah, so the yield arrows or triangles would be in the road, and as RJ is saying, there's a deflection angle though, so we engineer the roadways such that you can't just go straight through. The car's speed is slowed by the deflection angle in all three directions as you approach the roundabout. The other thing to think about, have you been to Truckee, where you get on off of 80 and head towards any of the ski resorts? They have roundabouts right there at the interchanges, and they function quite well. The one point that you're making that I think is a good one is that at this location, it's very small and tight. And so RJ has worked with the fire department to make sure that the turning radiuses work, that we have a fully rolled curb at that location if we were to do a roundabout there, so that emergency vehicles could get through there without difficulty. The nice thing about the roundabout at that location is it does have a lot of capacity to handle a lot of vehicles in the peak hour. And so everything tends to flow when you model it. And the thing that's interesting about this is it really improves vehicular circulation. As much as we're trying to do for bikes and peds through the active transportation program, this is one of the ways we can kind of chip away at some of the vehicular congestion in the area. So it's kind of, that's why we call it a multimodal transportation improvement. So.
And we just heard from the police chief that a lot of the accidents have occurred along that section of Tamil Vista.
Yeah, my understanding is that a lot of that is at the Warnham-Tamil Vista intersection, and those are both violations, more so maybe than collisions. And what we get is a lot of failure to yield to pedestrians in the walkway, and so, that's a vehicle code violation, and you get written up if there's a ped that you're not yielding to.
Further questions, David?
Thank you.
I have a question about the funding status of this.
That was my question.
There's no money.
Outside funding, are we going to pay for it, or a good slug of it ourselves, or pieces of it, or
Yeah.
what's going on?
Well, before we got here, your prior public works staff secured this $415,000 active transportation design, engineering, environmental dollars. And so RJ's picked that up and moved it quite forward quickly. And we have time constraints on using this money from the state that we're just barely getting by with. We applied for, correct me if I'm wrong, RJ, $2.7 million in construction funds in the last active transportation cycle. We didn't get that grant. And so we will likely look to maybe the state one more time. We'll look to the Transportation Authority Marin and try to get a grant for this. But I think we're in a position, and I think RJ laid it out, where if we look at the pedestrian improvements on Pfeiffer, or we look at the Warnham bike path, those are things that we could likely fund in the near term in-house. And that could decrease our grant ask in the future. So the nice thing about this project is we're looking at all the impacts, but we also have the ability to phase it and move certain segments forward using our local dollars.
So in terms of the most benefit, which pieces would the Nellen opening up and roundabout be most benefit, or the bicycle path on Warnham, or which?
Well, I'll give you my opinion. I think that redoing the Warnham Class 1 path to some degree or another and trying to widen it is a current need. I think the pedestrian crossing at Pfeiffer is important. We have a lot of pedestrians crossing there to the bus stop and to the overpass. Those would be kind of top priorities for me. And then maybe third on the list would be opening up that alternative vehicular route and relieving some of the traffic congestion. RJ's cranked some numbers on some of those different pieces, kind of back of napkin estimates. So I might ask him to talk about maybe the cost of some of those improvements.
Yeah, in general, so I agree with Peter's comments about the widening Warnham Drive and improving the Pfeiffer crossing. I think you get a lot of bang for your buck on those two items. The cycle track specifically is a small piece of the overall construction estimate. I think it was $2 million because a lot of it is striping and also moving the curb on the east side. It's not super involved. You're not tearing out all the sidewalk and redoing it. It's a lot of striping. So a more economical approach to implementing the cycle track is doing the Pfeiffer enhancement crossing and then doing something similar on the Warnham side, some sort of enhanced crossing, and then you can put in the cycle track. But yeah, once we open up the lane, then we're probably looking at a roundabout as well to make that fully functional.
In terms of what's important to various outside funding sources, which ones do you think would most intrigue them?
Yeah, I think it's we've had success with the active transportation programs. That's the old bicycle transportation account. So it's about pedestrian, bicycle mobility, safety, increasing usage of people biking and walking. So those are the funding sources we can be most competitive with. And as you all know, we have a lot of competing interests. We're struggling right now to keep up with all the transportation projects we want to implement. Those would be the ones that would be the most grant competitive, would be the active transportation components.
Go ahead, Sloan.
Sorry, thanks. I don't know, RJ, by the way, thank you for your report. Appreciate it. Okay. Assuming that the construction funding comes in, can you frame for me a little bit the timetable, what you're hoping for? Like, when do you find out about construction? Are we talking like a year or 5 years? And then assuming the money comes in, I know your staff is super crazy busy right now. Even if you had the money today, I don't think you could do the work or finish the plans and get it going for. So what's your most reasonable guess? Being neither aggressive nor conservative, just what do you sort of generally think is going to happen with the next step of getting this work done?
So taking this into final design, we'll probably take that through spring of next year. And then we'll be in a position where we can decide whether to move something forward or apply for additional grant funds. So we're talking, I would think, 2021 or later.
To actually perform to shovel the earth or whatever the expression is. Okay. Okay, and then the second thing is, so if you said 2021 roughly?
If we want to explore grant funding, additional grant funding, yeah.
Okay. And then how about the next step? And where this is leading up to is that we occasionally receive inquiries either at the public meeting or whenever we do anything talking about transportation, about when is the Alto Tunnel thing coming up. So the next step, as I look at the maps, which are excellent, by the way, is some additional, looks like pedestrian and bicycle pathways that connect further, deeper into Corte Madera, which I assume will take another 2-3 years past 2021, right? And you tell me, and then because what I'm really getting at is, I take it the Alto Tunnel question, like, do we even go that way? And if we do, how's it going to happen? That's the step after that, right? And the question I'm asking is, at some point, we're going to be asked to weigh in along with Mill Valley and Caltrans and other people about whether we ought to reopen the Alto Tunnel or go over Horse Hill or who knows what. But just confronting that issue is years away, I take it. Is that right?
It sounds like you have an opinion on how far away that is. I might agree with you. It seems a little far away. But the one point I want to make,
didn't mean to do that.
Baylor, that's okay. The point that I want to make is that these transportation enhancements have a lot of independent utility. We have a lot of internal circulation. We have a lot of short trips that happen across town between Corte Madera and Larkspur, between Redwood High and Paradise Drive. This set of improvements at this location and, in a radial way away from it, have a lot of circulation benefits, independent of whether someone's going to Mill Valley or going through the Alto Tunnel or Horse Hill. This actually came up, I think, at BPAC last time we talked about it. And so, yeah, I think the Alto Tunnel question is a different one, and it's not, in my opinion, it's not that related to all these improvements we need to do.
Okay.
So
it's not related, is your view, then?
No. We would do this regardless of whether Horse Hill or Corte Madera Avenue or Chapman or the Alto Tunnel, any of those routes over to the south became the preferred or the most viable. These would all have independent utility.
Can I just continue? Yeah. I fully agree with that. And by the way, we'll talk about it. I intend to be very supportive of this project. But regardless of whether this would have done anyway, this, I believe, has to be completed before we can address in a serious way whether to do the Alto Tunnel or over Horse Hill or whatever. So while I agree that it's unnecessary to confront that issue at this time, this has to be done either way. I get that. But I'm trying to get a sense for when we need to begin seriously thinking about that next step.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it's years, but maybe I'm overstating it. Maybe it's quicker than that.
It seems like a few years away to me.
Okay, good enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Jim.
Let me see. The bicycle pathway on Warnham will plug into Tamil Vista, where you're enhancing the bicycle
Correct.
pathways there. And that should be done before this project comes up.
The Tamla Vista Complete Streets project, I would say the timing of those, that finishing that project is would likely happen before we did an improvement on Warnham Bike Path. I do know that we also have 90% complete engineering plans to redo the Redwood Highway Bike Path as you go along across Redwood at Warnham and around by the village and over towards Paradise Drive. That pathway needs rehabilitation and reconstruction. So all of these projects are coming together at the same time. So I think that in 2 to 4 years, it's going to be a great time to be riding your bike around Corte Madera.
Well, one sort of question I have is, if we mobilize all the construction equipment for Tamla Vista, we got them for Redwood, could an argument be made to outside funding sources that it makes sense to accelerate funding for this project because we already have the contractors there and just get it done? Roughly the same argument that was used with San Rafael when they had money was provided to one of their paths.
Yeah.
Next to the SMART train.
I'll let RJ talk a little bit about construction phasing and mobilization. He's an expert in that. But what I will say when it comes to applying for grant funds for this type of project, we don't often get that as a criteria. Like, will you save money in construction if you build now? Usually is one of the questions. It's like, how many new people biking and walking will you attract? That's a more common question than the one you're asking. But we do have some probably some economies of scales for construction phasing.
Yeah, so to answer your question, I think you're referring to the example you used was for the Smart Path. I think a lot of that savings was because they could take the whole right-of-way along with the construction instead of working around the conflicts with the train schedule and whatnot. Wasn't completely about total amount of construction all at once. I think both of these projects, Tamla Vista and Central Regional Pathways, both have enough kind of, substance to them to where we're going to probably get competitive prices regardless.
Questions?
No.
I just had one. I know there was a public meeting on this a couple weeks ago, and there was a lot of questions about the Nellen cycle track.
About the what?
The cycle track on Nellen and whether or not it was necessary. And I know it had been through BPAC, and it was helpful for me to see the mapping in because I haven't revisited this in a while. But I guess my question is, did you talk a lot about what would happen when that was done? Because as I recall now, what we were talking about was the 101 overpass is right up there just to the north of it. The Sir Francis Drake bicycle path empties in. Lucky Drive, which is a huge bicycle route, all empties in. But there's no way to get onto Nellen right now, which is why nobody's using it. And I'm wondering, did you talk about that a lot in the meeting? I know it came up, and just curious.
Yeah, I do think that I remember RJ was there as well. There was at least 2 comments where some members of the public felt like that's a good map to look at. The purple horizontal line along Nellen, like maybe we don't need this bike path. I heard a couple people ask, right. Maybe if we do the one that's orange along Redwood Highway, maybe if we do a complete streets on Tamla Vista, that, not a lot of people would use this. And I don't believe that to be true, but it is a question worth asking. I think for me, if you look at how you would get to Greenbrae or how would you get over 101 on that bridge, or if you're even coming to or from one of the bus stops along 101, there's a lot of utility to a class 4 pathway there. And I think just like when you're driving, you don't only want to be on one route and have one choice, right? You just, when you're biking or walking, multiple choices are a good thing for safety and dispersion. So,
and we're going to be improving the crosswalks on Pfeiffer as well, which will help, I think, immensely, right?
Correct. Yeah.
From getting from the north over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, my question. Thank you. I'm going to open it up to the public now. Is there a member of the public who would like to comment on this? If so, you can come up and give your name. No? Okay. Then I will bring it back to the council for discussion, comments, and a possible motion and vote.
I got to think we're all in favor of this. We can discuss it if you like, but is there anybody who has a problem with it?
No problems. I just want to, if I may stress.
I want a new name for this project, because GAP project. We need one with pizzazz.
I would stress the importance of some sort of vegetated screening in between basically in between Nellen and the freeway. I think it's better for people in town, and it's better for people driving along the freeway.
And I might ask Amy to come up and comment on that briefly. I do know we have potential tree impacts at that location, but I do believe there's a replanting, or part of the mitigation and monitoring program is to replant at that location, or?
I thought I read that it gets too narrow.
Not on Nellen.
Not on
There is
Nellen.
no replanting on Nellen, and the mitigation is really the protection of the existing trees on Warnham.
Okay.
There's a tricky element, which is that the change in the right-of-way and the change in the paved area goes so close to the Caltrans right-of-way that adjacent to the highway, there's no room for planting. But there could possibly be, but I don't know if I haven't really looked at this, there could possibly be some area closer to the Tamridge Apartments, for example, on the west side of Nellen, that some additional tree planting could happen. There are a fair number of trees there that were planted, I think, at the time of Tamridge, and maybe some additional trees could go in.
Okay. Would you guys mind just looking into that and seeing if there's room in the project to incorporate more trees, if that's going to be necessary, or if what's already planted at Tamridge is going to be good once they grow to maturity?
We could look into that.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I just want to add, I think, the Nellen bike path, as I said, I know there was some controversy over it, but seeing the map really helps, because I realize again why BPAC approved this in the first place. That Sir Francis Drake overpass is a huge bike feeder. People, and they're going to come right there, and they're going to have to get south, and it's logical they would come right down Nellen. And we've also got the 101 overcrossing right there, so I think that, for me anyway, brings back why we did that. I also just wanted to comment, I agree with your priorities completely, because I think widening the Warnham pathway and improving that is a hugely important issue. That is a major bike route for kids coming from the east side over to Hall Middle School in Redwood. So improving that and making that safer is, I totally agree, should be the #1 priority. Further comments or a possible motion?
Mr. Mayor, I think that the necessary findings that were enumerated at the end of the mitigated negative declaration are easy for us to make, in my opinion, and I would move that we make those, as well as adopt resolution number 17-2019, approving the proposed Central Marin Regional Pathways Gap Closure Project, and approving the initial study and mitigated negative declaration for that project.
Second.
We have a motion and a second?
Councilmember Bailey?
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Anders?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. Moving on to item 6A, acceptance of Town of Corte Madera Annual Independent Audit Report. Fiscal year ending June 30th,
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, before we move on, though, can we also just clarify that staff has been given direction to file the notice of determination?
Oh, yes, thank you.
Is that accurate, my brothers on the council here?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good
Daria.
evening. Good evening, Mayor and Town Council members. This item is the annual audit report for June 30th, 2018, and the town's auditor, John Cropper of Cropper Accountancy, is here to make the report.
Thank you.
Great.
Mayor Ravazio and distinguished members of the council, it's a pleasure to be here tonight. We've seen a lot of good graphics tonight, I've got to say. I'm pretty impressed. I go to a lot of council meetings, and hopefully we'll do justice here tonight. But it is an interesting year. I'm not used to not having George Warman here. And Daria has done a fantastic job stepping in and really took on quite the year with the projects. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through the discussion, I think. So just as an overall, hopefully you all have been able to see the financial statements, which are significantly reduced thanks to Daria. We tried to do some consolidation, tried to give you the important parts. It's still made up of the most important thing, which is the audit opinion, right? Page 1. That is an unmodified opinion on page 1, which is what you want. There's some responsibilities that the town has there, some auditor responsibilities, the opinion, some RSI, required supplementary information, enough to read if you're interested. The second thing that the financial statements have in it is the management discussion and analysis, which if you're not a quantitative person, you can kind of read through it and get the gist. And that's provided by management and written by management. And it can be a really great source of information to those that live, the citizens of the town. And the last two things are the financial statements, the actual numbers and the notes. So we'll try and make it this is if I see anybody dozing off, I'll know how I'm doing. So you can see here the in not only our opinion, in the back there's some internal control language. We do not audit your internal controls. We are not issuing an opinion on the internal controls. We use internal control testing as a way of getting to know the town. And if we notice anything that's going on there, of course, we would put that in the back. And I think when we talk about the sanitary district, we'll talk about one item, but we're not doing that right now. For the town, the controls are functioning well. You want to know that. We don't have any material weaknesses, and we have no significant deficiencies. What is a material weakness? If an auditor comes into the town and has a material adjustment to the books that he did not expect or she did not expect, that would be that could be a symptom of a material weakness. It could mean, hey, maybe the financial statements aren't materially correct. So when your auditor gives you no management letter, it's a good thing. Some councils and some cities do thrive on getting a management letter, and sometimes it's appropriate. But that is really not the case here. And then, of course, staff, the commitment to ethics and integrity, that can't be downplayed. It actually starts with the council and comes all the way down through staff. And we get an environmental feel when we're out on field work. But we also do some planning, and we'll talk a little bit about that phase. Page 19, your statement of net position, that's a way of saying a balance sheet. You know, financial statements for cities are not that easy. They give you, after GASB 34, they give you two sets of balance sheets and two sets of income statements. The fund ones, which begins on the balance sheet on page 24, that is kind of what you base your budget on. And it's current economic resources. It does not include long-term debt. It does not include capital assets, that type of thing. Those are on the balance sheet that's on page 19, which is what we're talking about here. So this is the full economic resources of the town. And you can see the assets are close to 90 million, the liabilities 41 million, your net position about 54 million. Of that 54, a lot of that is investment in fixed assets. You can't sell the roads. Doesn't do you a whole lot of good. So we included unrestricted net position in green there, because I think that's an important number for you to recognize that if somebody said to the town manager, how much money do we have to spend on this project without funding or whatever, you're around $820,000. If you're thinking, hey, that's hey, it's positive, right? In today's world with pensions and OPEB and all those kinds of things, that number can go red pretty quick. So, if a guy was doing a bond for the city, would they be going, you're rich? Probably not. But when you see some of the liabilities that you've got up for pension, it makes sense. So, and I guess that rolls right into the little things we've got here at the bottom. The net pension liability increased almost $2 million to $19 million based on the CalPERS assumptions. I think if you go to note 14, and we're not going to do that right now, but you could, you'd see some of the information there relative to that information. And then this year, we have the implementation of I kind of think it's built on the same principles, the OPEB, the other post-employment benefits, which is medical. It increased 3.3 up to almost $10 million, 9.5. This existed on your financial statements last year, but not really. They redid, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board redid it to mirror the pension, which is GASB 68. So if you are talking to your council members from other cities and they say GASB 68, you associate pensions with that. If they talk about now GASB 75, which was implemented in the current year, they're talking about post-employment benefits or retirement or medical benefits. And that can be a pretty big number, and you can see that. So this year, that was implemented. I think we did this slide last year. I'm only putting it up here because I want to go very quickly through this and then do GASB 75 with you so you see some of the differences here. You can see something called deferred inflows and deferred outflows up here. You're probably thinking, wait a minute, I'm ready for the liability, the pension liability, but what's this deferred inflow and outflow stuff? You'll see it on page 19. You won't see it on the other balance sheet because this is difficult to explain, but we'll say that a deferred outflow is similar to an asset, and we'll say a deferred inflow is similar to a liability. And I don't want to go into the differences, but it matters to the valuation experts that are valuing your pension debt and your OPEB debt. It has largely to do with timing, because if you pay money for the whole year into your pension and the auditor comes in and the valuation guys don't take into account all that money it's gone, you need to be credited with that as a prepaid asset or a deferred outflow, as they call it. And there's other terminologies, but I'd really fry you if I went into too much detail here. The pension liability, you would think that in the current year that would have gone down a little bit. In other words, you would have decreased the liability, and it didn't happen. And part of the reason is because your discount rate went down. So CalPERS is trying to address that issue. They actually had in the year we're auditing, which is, we're now 9 months past it, June 30, 2018, they had a good year. I think it was like 11.2% they made. So you'd think if the assumption is that that's above what you expected, your liability would drop. But it was countered by the discount rate. So there's other things going on, and I'd encourage you, if you're curious, to look at the notes in 14 and 15. We probably shouldn't do that here, but that's up here on the screen for that. You can see that. And if you're curious, what were the pension contributions? You can see the pension expense is 1.7. The actual contributions were 1.6. So they're not the exact same thing. 75. I tried to set it up the same. You can see the discount rate's a little different. That it's a little, it's not always done through CalPERS here. You can do it through CalPERS, but other people, other cities don't necessarily use CalPERS all the time on this GASB 75 stuff. And you can see that 17 was a little bit blank in the deferred inflows and outflows. Why is there a number if we're implementing it in the current year in the net OPEB liability? The reason is because we had another GASB, which was very flawed, called GASB 45, and they would only put part of it there, and then they'd put it in the notes for some reason. It was a little bit bizarre, so I'll leave it at that. And here you can see that we have a prior period adjustment of $3.5 million. What does that mean? That means that everything being equal, that $820,000 that was in green on the other page, that could have been added to that 3.5. You could have been somewhere in the fours, but we had a prior period adjustment, nothing that anybody here in the town did, but the academics in the Governmental Accounting Standards Board realized they had not provided for a liability that existed, and much like the pension, they wanted to provide for that. So they adopted this GASB 75. If you look at the long-term liabilities on page 19, you'll see a lot of them, the non-currents, are somewhere around almost $40 million. But that's not cash that needs to come out right today. In fact, the mortality tables will take care of a lot of that. I can see Todd thinking over there. So you should have, the council should be aware, we have an engagement letter when we start out. There was a management representation letter to help management kind of go over and make sure that the auditor's been given everything. The engagement letter, of course, sets the terms. And then there's a communication letter that's written to the board. GASB wants us to talk to you more. They want us to communicate better. And so you'll see a lot of headings there in the letter. You'll also see the most important things that the auditor thinks, you know, on the letter, I kind of indent what's not template. And so you'll see on the first page the most sensitive estimates affecting the town's financial statements. Of course, 68, GASB 68, what I just put up here, I thought that was important. I thought you'd want to know. GASB 75, another indent. Another indent for management's estimate on depreciation. Depreciation's a huge deal at the town. You've got a lot of capital assets. And Daria loved it this year because she got to redo all of her fixed assets, and it kind of made her scream a little bit, right? It was a transition year with the new software, and so there were some things that were a challenge there. The second area, you'll see sensitive disclosures, and one of them is in note 1, the reconfiguration of the governmental funds during the year. Another thing that she took on, she was all in this year. This was a lot of work. Your report was a lot of work, and it's good. It's good because she's putting her fingerprint on things after many years of George putting lots of stuff in your in your financials. That's kind of, you can read this letter on your own, or you can ask me questions as we go through this, but that's there. I am really here for the council. Questions are fantastic. I have some audit phases that I could talk about here. I've got we really simplified your financials for you here. This is the government-wide. You can see the comparative years of your general revenue, your program revenues when you're charging people, your expenses, and then change in net position. Okay, if that number were red, I'd have some concerns, right? You can see change in net position is 6.3. Last year it was 4.1. You add it to the beginning net position. Of course, we have that pesky $3.5 million GASB 75 adjustments. It's taken it right off of your fund balance or your net position to come down to $54 million. So you can kind of see a little bit of the view in a condensed form here. And then this is your general fund, where this is, okay, the other one was, it had your debt in it, it had your roads in it, your capital projects, all that stuff. This doesn't. This is pretty much your current economic resources. You see the revenues exceed the expenditures, which is great. And then you had some transfers, and then again, the change, 2.7, good number. You know, it's government's job is not to spend everything, and you're not. But it is good to have for a day down the road when you want to do a $3 million project, right? Get those bikers on the road and not get them killed by a car. So anyhow, you see the fund balance is much. Okay, my time is up. I was like, that was brilliant, Rebecca. Okay. I am, yeah.
Okay.
But I didn't go through this, but I could. So I'm just here for questions.
May I add something, Mr. Mayor, members of the council?
Please, go ahead.
So those that were on the police council audit report, there's a little bit of a different story, and it has to do with the plan. So keep in mind when you talk about last year to this year and the net position, how it's increased $2 to $3 million. I want to point out to the council the conversations that we've had.
Did you say increased or decreased?
It's increased, right? Our net position.
It was coming away from net position, I believe.
Between 17 and 18. It's improved, correct? So one of the things I want to point out to you is that within this funding plan, as you know, we put $1.4 million towards our pension liability through CalPERS, and on top of it, the work of the Vice Mayor and the Finance Committee. What you have in front of you, and it's a 10-year plan, and again, this is a continued plan until we can fully fund. But we looked at what we actually believe we need to save to fully fund our unfunded liabilities. And so the first page has to do with the OPEB liability, the retiree health. And if you look at the 10-year projection, and you'll see it's a flat rate of $200,000 deposits every year into our OPEB trust. We believe we'll have $7.2 million in a side trust fund to pay for our retiree health. Right now, our unfunded liability, I believe, in OPEB is about $9 million. And so we'll be almost fully funded in the 10-year plan. That's in place now. This projection takes into account, if you look at the 40-year trends of the worst economic downturns, we've taken that into consideration. So the work of Daria has already considered that in our projections. The second page is really important because what we did is we believe the discount rate should be 6%, not 7%, where CalPERS is going. And so if you look at the difference with a 5% annual rate of return in our pension trust, we currently have $1.3 million in it. We're projecting approximately 11.9, just under $12 million in the next 10 to 11 years. And so again, that's in our current funding plans. You'll notice that the scheduled deposits start from $956,000 this current fiscal year, and it fluctuates anywhere from that number down to $600. The reason why is this acts as a secondary reserve fund for us in the good times and bad. So we never have to hit our reserve fund, and so this will fluctuate based on some economic downturns that we do anticipate. I just want to point that out to the council, so when you see these big numbers, the unfunded number of 19 million is paid out over the next 40 to 50 years, right? So think about that for a second. We believe we have a plan in the next 10 years to get us to the 90% funded rate if our projections are correct, and I just want to point that out to the council. It's really important when we talk about these big numbers and what we're doing. So
I'll add on to that. I think if you had your valuation expert in here, Bartel, they would tell you that give us a couple more years on this mortality table, it's going to stop going up. And when it stops going up, everybody will take a deep breath and go, oh man, I was waiting for that to happen. And then it'll, people will be dying off. The plan is not quite as robust nowadays, and it'll correct.
That's the good news.
Yeah, that's the good news. Oh, boy. So, I think what your town managers correctly pointed out on page 19, you do have some robust liabilities, the 9.5 for the OPEB and almost 20 million for the net pension liability. I know that you, as a council, were looking at stabilization funds that you would provide a little extra, right? You have what CalPERS tells you need to pay, and then, maybe pay it down a little bit quicker. The actuaries probably have taken those numbers. I'm not positive on this. I'm guessing. And taken what you've paid in, what the liability that's been calculated, subtracted the two to come up with your net pension liability. So where's my stabilization fund? It's probably only on page 19, and it's probably in that $19 million number. So are there questions about what an auditor does, or?
We'll take questions from the council first, so.
You want to go first, Jim?
Yeah, let's see, 2 questions.
Sure.
The MD&A.
No acronyms.
Management
discussion analysis.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't, it was not noted as being unaudited, so does that mean you're?
We read it. If you read the opinion, it's considered required supplementary information, RSI. And in your audit report, if you're looking at the required supplementary information area under other matters, you'd see that not only that, but some of the schedules in like 88 and 89 having to do with pension and OPEB that are all required, we are required to read for reasonableness.
Okay.
It's not audited like they're part of the numbers. We know the numbers. Yeah.
And then the other thing is, you mentioned that we've, with George retiring. And
Yes.
Daria came on.
Yes.
Let me figure out a good way to put this. Is our chart of accounts now sufficiently standard that accountants from elsewhere can easily come in and work with our chart of accounts?
That's a very intuitive question. I mean, that's a great question. Yes. Daria spent a lot of time redoing the chart of accounts to make it more user-friendly. Bryce has joined us. Bryce is the manager, Bryce Rojas here, who did a lot of work in the planning phase. Normally that's not something we do in the planning phase, but to get ahead of it, not only was that significant work, it's a good thing that we had the institutional knowledge, being that we've been auditors for a couple of years here. It wasn't just that the financial statements changed and the GL changed. I mean, you had a lot of IT stuff changing. Bryce, did you want to comment at all on the GL?
And as I said at the town luncheon, Daria's done a lot of great things, including getting it all on the computer. The whole budget is on a computer now, so. Incredible. It's great how that works.
I have to short the tape manufacturers and the spreadsheet manufacturers.
The green sheet manufacturers.
Yeah.
So.
Hi, yes, thank you, by the way, for your report. And I have no difficulty finding that the report should be accepted and so forth. Yeah, it's obviously did good work, and Daria, of course, we appreciate
Yes.
it. And Todd, I know you're involved in there. I do have a question.
Yes.
Could you explain to a layman why is it that the town's net OPEB obligation and net pension liability worsened by millions of dollars,
The $2 million?
Well, $2 million for the net pension liability and $3 million, a worsening position with those two things, despite, I believe, okay, so I know that's it, Todd. I'm sure, can you just dumb it down for me? Why, despite the fact that we've been put money away and the market's doing okay and we have like a plan, this has worsened somehow?
So did you say discount rate? Was that your answer?
Well, the discount rate for the pension, but it's also the GASB requirements of how they look at the OPEB, right? They've changed they keep changing
so I'm going to go too GASB on you here. GASB 45.
That's what I'm asking you to dumb down.
Okay, so I sat next to
First of all, what does that stand for?
A Governmental Accounting Standards Board.
Got it.
I sat next to one of the academics at a lunch in Sacramento about a year ago, and he said, yeah, that 45 was terrible. Because they told us how much money we were supposed to put aside, but it wasn't the right number. It was.
And so they're now correcting that, or
they're correcting that. Okay. And in the back, in the notes, they'd mentioned the right number, so they'd put the 9.5 in the back. But if you paid more money in than what they told you to put in on a yearly basis, you could have an asset. I just rolled off a meeting 2 nights ago. They had an asset last year, but they had a huge liability. So it didn't make sense. So what you have now is the same thing going on with your pension that you have going on with your GASB 68 and GASB 75. Same principles now. Almost the same concepts and assumptions and discount rates, but they're different.
So, and maybe this question is directed to either Todd or Daria, but I wouldn't have expected to. I think, by the way, your plan is great, Todd. I couldn't be more grateful for the whole thing. But A, did you anticipate this crazy difference? And B, should we maybe this is for the auditor here, should we reasonably anticipate additional crazy changes like this when we're doing our own forecasting?
In short, no, we knew this was coming 2 years ago. It was how they reported, so how the auditors have to report the numbers and how we look at the numbers when we project. We had a pretty good idea 2 years ago.
About this one.
And so we knew it was 9 million. We knew what the number was. And so this accounts for it. And like I said, on our current projections, we will be close to fully funded in the next 10 years.
Okay.
So we're comfortable with it. It's not a surprise to us.
We'll see. I mean, I really have seen this. Look up here. See that pension expense? Last year it was a credit. This year it's a debit. Right. That's crazy. In the accounting world, this should be same year to year. So you got 1.6 at the bottom.
Let's be clear. So what I'm talking about is retiree health. Retiree health is an animal in itself, but it is different than the pension conversation. So when you look at the difference of how GASB reported, and it went from 6 to 9, we knew that 2 years ago. We have a pretty good idea, and with the changes of how we've changed retiree medical in our MOUs and what we've done, and consolidating both police and fire, we have a much better grasp as a town to handle that. In the next 10 years, we will be 90% fully funded. I'm comfortable in that, in saying that, and I can say I'm comfortable. The pension conversation it's a moving target. There's no doubt. But what we've done is we've anticipated a 6% rate of return, which is reasonable if you look at going past and future. It should probably be 5. In our projections in our pension trust, we've anticipated 5. And so we will probably cut our pension cost by 50%, but that's a moving target for us, and the auditor's absolutely right about that. But there's no surprises here to this point for us. It's how the auditors have the mandates of how they show the numbers on the books. We've known what some of these projections are for the past 2 years and have started planning for it and have been communicating that with the council.
And I'm going to agree with everything that your town manager said. I will also say, if you get into it and you look in your notes, you will see it has the flexibility there. It shows it with your current discount rate, and if it was 1% less or 1% more, and it fluctuates quite a bit. And
okay, good enough. Thank you.
Sure.
And I'll give you one example. I'm sorry, one other example. So when we say we have a $19 million unfunded liability, it's closer to 26. Okay, so that's what we need to.
That makes me feel wicked.
We need to think about that. That's worst case scenario, and we need to plan for that, and that's what we're doing. And so
that's because you've assumed 6% and not 7, and 7 is what's in the report.
Got it.
So that's kind of in a nutshell what's happening. Hate to see the actuaries taking over my job, but I mean, a lot of your report is actuarially done. So
And we still have questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Did you guys have?
No, thank you. I
guys
think
are done?
David does.
Okay, David?
Question I think is for Todd. Who pays us 5% on our savings? And how can we be confident that we're going to get that much?
And with our pension, so I mean, I'm going to defer to the vice mayor on this one because he's part of our group, but that's part of our pension plan that the 115 trust that we've entered and the plan that we're investing in. And so it's something we look at annually as a group and how we invest. And so, and the vice mayor is a big part of that investment strategy. So.
And basically, it's based on the blend of fixed income and equities. And
So it's a projected blended rate of return.
yeah,
Okay.
so
Okay.
in terms of if you wanted to go out and buy a bond at that, you couldn't do it.
You couldn't.
You'd have to get equities and bonds and hope that the weighted average got you up there.
Okay. And I've got another couple of questions, please, because you pointed it out on page 19. This is kind of our master description of our net position. And first of all, let me make sure that I'm in the right, got the right definition. The business type activities are those for which we get paid fees, such as Sanitary District 2. So, and that's the principal business type activity in that column, right? Along with age-friendly Corte Madera.
Yes.
Okay. And so governmental activities is everything else. That's everything that we are doing, everything that we have as assets and liabilities. And my question is,
Well, I'd throw internal service funds into the governmental activities column. And that, yeah, a lot of times cities will provide for insurance and other, if you had a motor pool, that type of internal service could also roll up into that governmental activities.
okay, but you celebrated the $819,000 positive number which it represents a combination of those two different columns.
That's true.
Okay, what is the meaning of the $9.7 million negative number under our governmental activities in our balance sheet?
Where are you, Dave?
What does that mean
Page
to you?
19,
Okay.
bottom, second from the bottom row.
Okay, thank you.
And far left-hand column under governmental activities. Because, I mean, the way I could, as a layman, read this back to you is say, well, thankfully we have assets in Sanitary District 2 that exceed $10 million, and that rescues us from having a deficit of a little under $10 million in our governmental
This is a really great question. Now, if you recall, I said you have two balance sheets. One's current economic resources, which is page 24.
Got it.
And the other one is long-term.
Got it.
So if you go to page 24, you've got fund balance of, say, $11 million, some of which is broken out as commitment for contingencies, which the board, the council would have done, or assigned for capital projects, those kinds of things. It goes on to 25 and reconciles down to go to the government-wide. So I'm really not wanting to confuse you too much, but we go from the governmental funds to the government-wide that has this big negative number by adding all the things on page 25. And a lot of that is debt.
Long-term debt. Okay.
Long-term debt. And that was spoken of by, your town manager. He said, we got 19 million, almost 26 million. Yes, it's right there in that column that you're looking at, governmental activities. And another part of that is the OPEB. And so that's a lot of what you've got, but you have time to recover. And if you do look at your financial statements in terms of how much money on the P&L side, you go to page 20 and 21, you can see that you're positive, right? Like 3.8 million.
Yep.
2.5.
Yep.
Everybody with me?
Yep, saw that.
Good. Okay. Hopefully I explained that okay.
Yes, you did. So in short, it's long-term debt and long-term liabilities, particularly in the pension area.
That's true.
That weigh against the theoretical asset values, which are, to me, it's
Yeah.
books.
This is
Right,
full
it's
accrual.
fantasy.
This is not cash basis. This
Yeah.
is full accrual accounting.
Yeah, okay.
And it's the whole power of the city or the town. All the debt.
Congratulations for coming up with a mostly clean bill of health.
Pretty clean.
Do you have other questions, David? Okay. Eli, any questions?
No, thank you.
I don't have any, so then we will.
have one more.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I recall a few years ago, Park Madera Center was shifted from the enterprise fund, which I believe would be in the business type activities.
Yeah.
Over to governmental activities.
Right.
On a going forward basis, is that still appropriate because we are finally cash flow positive?
That's a good question, in my opinion.
And I understood the reason we did it, during the George Warnham regime was that we had to continually fund the deficit from the general fund, and so.
Right. And, this is kind of an interesting question because one of the things that an auditor does, we always have to look at the general fund. You can also have other funds that may not meet the criteria of a major fund. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's one of the funds that you want to focus on and have us focus on. Do you have a comment on?
Right.
It's not really broken out for you to look at it. Yeah, that was one of the benefits of George's many pages.
Right. I like that.
Yeah, this is a little easier to read, but yeah.
I'm just wondering from a sort of policy standpoint, does it make sense to shift it over, or would we run into more problems by moving stuff back and forth?
I think it's what the council wants to do. If you want to track that one particular fund, it probably should be taken out of the general fund and tracked in a different area, and it can be a roll up into different funds so that it makes more sense. So you don't have to go, hey, I've got the financial statements, but I can't find Park Madera Fund. And that's something that can be talked about. But for today's discussion, this report is probably not going to be adequate.
I believe in your chart of accounts, you do have it as a separate sub-fund.
Say it again. Bryce, talk a little louder here for me.
Well, if I understood your question, you're asking us if we think you should move it out. I think it's more your decision.
Right, well, I'm just worried about moving stuff in and out.
You don't want to go back and forth every year, saying, well, it didn't make money this year, so let's put it back in the general fund.
Yeah.
As long as it's consistent.
Okay.
Yeah, but you can have a roll up, and you can definitely have it in there somewhere. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, then we will open up to the public for comment. Is there a member of the public who would wish to comment on this? Hearing none and seeing none, I will bring it back to the council for comments and a possible motion and discussion.
I agree with Vice Mayor on the characterization of the Park Madera investment as a business-type activity. It's supposed to be not a governmental function, and there are very little in the way of governmental functions involved in that property. It's more like a business-type activity that has income. I would agree that that's where it belongs.
It could still be brought out as a major fund in that form. Yeah.
Well, it definitely should be accounted for separately, no question.
No, as a major fund, as an auditor, we would audit it differently. So you can see it on page, I'm not proposing that you do this, but you have the option for any fund that might have a little bit more of a political stance to it. Not on page 19, but on page 24, you'll see you only have, as a major fund, your general fund right now. You could break out another general fund, or not a general fund, another major fund there. from a presentation standpoint.
Would anybody like to make a motion on the Corte Madera audit?
I would make a motion to accept the Town of Corte Madera Annual Independent Audit Report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2018.
Second.
Councilmember Bailey?
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
And we'll move on to 6B, review and discussion of town council rules and procedures. This is not, we're not taking a vote on this. This is input for staff, so I'm going to turn it over to staff who's going to talk about this.
So, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, if you'll allow me to consider possibly recessing our town council meeting and going into the sanitary district
Okay.
meeting, and we can just continue with the sanitary audit.
Okay.
And finish up that, and then move back to the council meeting if that's the will of the council, maybe just for flow.
I'm okay with that, but
I'd like to make a motion that we
Recess
recess the council meeting.
okay?
Second.
and open the sanitary district.
Okay.
Councilmember Bailey?
Yes.
Councilmember Beckman?
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews?
Yes.
Mayor Ravazio?
Yes. And now we need a motion to start the sanitary district meeting?
No,
Is that-
President.
No, oh, we
Just
just,
close it
oh,
up.
we can just go, even better.
Do I need to take roll?
But we don't have to do another.
Okay, so then we're going to
I do need
move.
to take roll.
What's that?
I need to take roll.
We need to take roll, because we're officially opening up the sanitary district
Correct.
meeting.
Board Member Bailey?
Yes.
Board
Here.
Member Beckman?
Yes.
Board Member Board Member Kuhnhart?
Here.
Vice President Andrews?
Yes.
President Ravazio?
Yes. So we are now moving on to the audit for the sanitary district number 2. And I'm going to turn it over to the auditors, I guess.
Okay.
Do I have to go
And
through
I'm going to turn it over to Bryce.
thing?
What's
Do I have
that?
to go through public comment and all that
Yes.
first? Yes, I do. I'm sorry, I got to find my agenda. Hang on.
Okay.
I'm sorry, give me one moment. Open time for public comment. Is there any member of the public who'd like to comment on an item not on the agenda for SD2? Okay, hearing none. Consent calendar items, the purpose is to group items together to routine. Any item can be removed by a member of the public. Is there anyone who would like to remove an item? If not, I'll entertain a
4A
motion.
and B.
Second.
We have a motion?
Yes, but abstain from the minutes. I wasn't here for that meeting.
Yes.
Board Member Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice President.
Vice President Andrews?
Yes.
President Ravazio?
Yes. And we will now, there are no public hearings, so we're going to move on to the business item, which is the acceptance of sanitary district number 2 audit.
Okay, here we are again. And probably you're fortunate on this. I'm going to turn the time over to Bryce Rojas. Different voice. He's the manager on the city audit as well as sanitary district audit. And I think he's probably going to be even more brief than, is it possibly more brief than me?
We're okay with that. Just as an aside.
So I'm going to give a similar presentation as was given a few minutes ago on the town. And so if there's any questions, I might be going a little quicker. If there's any questions, please
We're okay
let
with
us know. So as was probably discussed earlier, the audit results, we gave an unmodified opinion on the district, the sanitary district, a clean opinion. That's what you were hoping for. And then we also had opinion at the beginning of the audit, or beginning of the financial statements, and one at the end. And the first one's on financial statements, which I just said was clean. And then the second one is on internal controls. We were able to review the internal controls of the district and the town. And during our testing, we found a material journal entry, and that indicates that there's typically a material weakness. So our opinion at the back shows a material weakness, which is not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but it's not the worst thing in the world. But we discussed this with management, and they've already come up with a plan and how to mitigate future risks and future weaknesses on this. And we like working with the management of the district and town. They show commitment to ethics and integrity, and they're good people to work with. And The balance sheet, the statement of net position for the district, the assets are about $26 million. The liabilities are only $140,000, which resulted in a $26 million net position. That's an increase of about $2.5 million from the previous year. And if you take the assets, take out the fixed assets, and pay off all the liabilities, you're left with an unrestricted net position of $10 million. And moving forward, did you already look at these? So these are some of the letters that are issued between the district and the auditors throughout the course of the audit. There's an engagement letter, which is basically the contracts that's forth the responsibilities for both parties. At the end of the audit, management issues a letter to us stating that they did everything they're supposed to and they represented everything that we're supposed to do, represent to us during the audit. Then there's the communication with those charged with governance, and that's basically a template letter that states the main estimates used by the district in their accounting and also some of the more important disclosures. And then there's the management letter, which we incorporated this year into that second opinion I talked about a few minutes ago, the opinion on internal controls. And some of the audit phases, the planning phase, fieldwork phase, and then report phase. I think that was discussed earlier, but if you have questions, you can ask me. We spent a lot of time this year talking with Daria on changes she implemented for the district and the town, the chart of accounts, which was discussed, and the new audit accounting software. We use audit software. You have accounting software. And so we do a lot of planning up front, then we do our field work, and then we come back with the results of our audit, issue the financial statements and the opinions and other letters. And then here's the comparative results on the profit and loss for the district. The revenues were about the same from year to year. The expenses went down almost $1 million, which resulted in a greater net position this year than there was, change in net position this year than there was in 2017. So the change in net position went up about $2.5 million over the year. And I'll open up questions. I'll take questions from.
Okay, thank you. Then we'll have any questions from the council. Sloan.
Sorry, just one. And it was an excellent and clear report. I read beforehand as the other one, and so my compliments. I thought at your introduction you said there was one material issue which you'd worked through with the staff how to fix. Did I miss that? I didn't understand what you meant by that.
So typically when we audit, sometimes we find errors.
Right.
And we have journal entries to correct those errors.
Right.
And when there's a large material journal entry, that indicates there's a material weakness in the controls at the district. And so there was a material weakness that we found.
Because there had been a single entry that was an error, and you corrected the error, but it signaled to you maybe there's a control that's needed here.
Correct. A better control or improvements to the control.
But after correcting the error, everything seemed to make sense.
Yes, I think going forward everything will be fine, and the financial statements are clean. It was related to the fixed assets.
Was it the depreciation schedule?
Right.
Excuse me?
During the course of the conversion to new software, the district encountered problems with reporting and recalculating depreciation.
Yes, the booking of the depreciation didn't happen correctly. It was booked to a wrong account, and so it was recognized by we recognized it, brought it to the to the management, and they've figured out how to keep that from happening in the future. Did I answer that?
This is going to be brief, I promise. Sanitary districts are totally different. Accrual basis accounting, just like any business, is what a sanitary district operates on. Modified accrual accounting is what governments use. And there was a transition going on with the software. And as part of that, we were knocked out. I would say our fund balance got out of whack, and a couple other things having to do with the transition, I think primarily with the audit software. Okay. That was my take on it. So.
Yeah, no, I don't have any problems with it at all. I just wondered what the hell it was because. Okay. I mean, questions? No, but after, right, no.
Jim.
I'll talk to Daria later.
Okay.
I've experienced similar problems. I just want to know the details. Okay.
Okay. David?
Does it make sense to ask Peter Brown at this moment the rough estimate of the future capital improvement plan that serves that which is underground for sanitary district number 2? In other words, we're building up quite a unrestricted net position here, and what are the liabilities that we project are going against that?
Yeah. Thank you, Board Member Kuhnhart. We have working on our next capital improvement plan. It's a 2-year draft, and you'll see it, I think, next month. We're looking at about a $6 million a year clip. And that's if everything goes well and we have staff and we have people who bid on our projects. And
That's everything. That's everything.
that's our capital improvement program on an annual basis for the sanitary district.
So that's 12 for the 2 years.
It's 12 for the 2 years. But the caveat there is that we also have a couple of big ticket items that are going to happen in the next 2 to 5 years that could be $5 to $8 million projects alone, singular projects, not an annual. And so, on the one hand, our net position is strong and we have a lot of assets, certainly fiscally, but we also have a lot of near-term demand. And so my opinion is that our funding stream is going to need to be looked at. I know part of your report also included the history of our, rates in which we charge our customers. I know CMSA is raising their rates. You're probably aware of that. Yeah, we have a lot of capital needs, and we have a big plan to deliver those in the next coming years.
Thank you. Any other questions? Eli? No? Okay, then I will open it up to the public for any public comment. Boy, nothing clears the room like an audit, huh? Wow, okay. You guys did a great job. We're in good shape, so that's good. Okay, then I will bring it, hearing none, I will bring it back to the council for comments, discussion, and a possible motion.
I'll make a motion, we accept the report.
Second.
Motion and a second?
Board Member Bailey?
Yes.
Board Member Beckman?
Yes.
Board Member Kuhnhart?
Yes.
Vice President Andrews?
Yes.
President Ravazio?
Yes. Okay, then let's finish up the sanitary district meeting, district manager report.
Formally adjourn it.
Thank you. There may be reports or something.
No, we're gonna finish the meeting, I'm gonna finish the rest of the agenda, and then,
Oh, the sanitary.
yeah, so that we don't have to open it up and come back to it.
Okay,
We'll
okay.
start over again.
All right, I'm sorry.
Okay, so district manager report, is there one? No. Any board member reports?
Absolutely not. Oh, my God, really?
I attended a meeting.
Okay.
I gotta, you attend the meeting, you gotta get in the minutes. On behalf of the town of Corte Madera, I attended on the 4th of this month, attended the Home and Community Development Block Grant Board recommendation session, and we arrived at the set of recommendations, which are more modest this year than prior years, none of which directly affects our town, but they are big and important, useful projects in the county. And those are going to be recommended to the Board of Supervisors. I think it is early next week or the week after. Anyway, that's all.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. Review of draft agenda, there is none. Then we will adjourn the sanitary district meeting.
Oh, I thought you just.
You can only report once.
I'm sorry, I thought you were.
This is
Oh, was that your council report?
This is only a sanitary district meeting right now. So we're only talking about sanitary
Well, I
district.
definitely don't have any reports.
That's why you surprised me.
Okay, so let's adjourn the sanitary district meeting and
Oh, gosh.
is there I need a motion, I guess?
I'll
to
move that we
reopen
adjourn
council
meeting A and move to back to meeting, we adjourn the sanitary district and reopen the
Town council
town
meeting.
council meeting.
Second.
Okay.
Unanimous.
So complicated.
Thank you, Peter.
Board Member Bailey? Do I have to vote on that?
I don't know. Do we have to vote on
You
it?
made a motion.
Yes, I agree.
Board Member Beckman?
Yes.
Board Member
It's gonna be
Kuhnhart?
unanimous.
Yes.
Vice President Andrews.
Yes.
President Ravazio.
Yes. Okay, so we're reopening the town council meeting. We were starting item 6B,
policies.
review and discussion of town council rules and procedures, which we're going to turn over to town staff.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just some, house cleaning items if the council wishes to discuss these. As you know, the government code allows for the Corte Madera Town Council to adopt its own rules and procedures for meetings. The town council amended their rules and procedures in December of 2017. On August 14th of 2018, the town council held a strategic planning session and developed a 2018-19 work plan. And that work plan is attached to your report in attachment 2. Town staff met shortly after the strategic planning session and developed a 2019 schedule to deliver that work plan. And Rebecca's passing that out for your review as well as we go through this. So some of the things have just point of procedure for the council if you wish to discuss. Section 7.3 of the agenda, as you know, when we review the draft agenda, council members by motion may direct staff to put future items on the agenda. We're all on a routine basis asked to, place letters of support, ordinances, all kinds of things throughout the year. And this work plan is one of my thoughts of attaching it to the draft agenda. So when we talk about, do we want to consider something as a council outside of the work plan, we can have a conversation of like, well, how are we going to deliver it within this year? And I just quickly to go over the work plan for you of how it's set up. Rebecca put this together for us. We didn't list anything for January, February, and March because they've really already been completed. But from April to December, you can see how we're starting to fill in our council meetings. We have 2 meetings in the summer that are canceled. We also want to be sensitive. A lot of residents and the council members may be gone during the summer, and so August is always a difficult time to get things accomplished, as is December. So it really limits our remaining meetings throughout the year. At the bottom, you'll see gray, yellow, and blue boxes. Those are future agenda items that are going to be implemented into this plan as well, and we just need to figure out how we do that. As you know, a lot of these items go through a number of committees and commissions and boards before they ever get to the council. So there's a lot of work to be done. So I just really want to point that out to council. This is an aggressive work plan as it is, and sometimes as small of even a letter of support without the right process with staff and the council, it is really difficult to deliver this work plan. And I haven't really done a good job of visual. I'm a visual person, like I think many of you are, and to visualize when we ask for something or what are we trying to accomplish, it's visual. So Rebecca helped us out to kind of provide that for us. And so that's just one point that I think might be helpful for us when we talk about, future agenda items. I know we've had a lot of discussion over, tonight we had a request for a couple items, and I think they're important. And so if council would like us to come back at a future meeting as a business item to talk about the work plan, and maybe a couple of these items aren't important to you or you want to push them back, we can certainly do it. What I'll say is this work plan as it is, it's aggressive. It also needs to account for appeals and things that come up in an emergency basis. So this is aggressive, and so if we're going to start adding anything to it at this point and keep our meetings to 3 hours, we're going to have to take something else off of it. And I just wanted to prepare the council for that, and then also, do a better job of explaining, before these items ever get to us, it's not like, hey, put that on the next agenda. These things go through boards and commissions. And so that was just for item 1, just for some consideration. I also, and really I guess that's item 2 as well. But one of the things for item 2, the procedure for letters of support in opposition or support of legislation and important issues. And so, we have a League of California Cities rep on the council, and we also have a representative on the legislative committee. And I think as a past practice, but I'm not completely sure of that conversation years back, but it was for like important legislative items that we really wanted a representative from each council in the county as part of the MCCMC to like, if we're going to support something or have a problem with legislation, that we do it as a county, as a group. And so just a question of like process when the League of California Cities approaches the towns and cities for support, what should that process look like of how it gets to council? Because a lot of times it is last minute. Is it something, and sometimes we don't even have time to get it before the council, before the meeting. Is it something the council wants to consider through the legislative rep and the mayor and staff of how we approach those types of things? And so as an order of process. So that was an item. Number 3, council members and staff, we routinely receive requests for interviews from the media. We're also in the public and so in special groups. And so, it's probably an informal process. This council is works together, and I really appreciate that. There's some definitely representation of other councils where they are not on the same page, I think, of how they operate as a council. One of the things that I just throw out there for the council for consideration is an informal process of when we do get a request. A lot of times they'll send something to staff and the council at the same time to see if anyone wants to be interviewed or to talk about something. And it's certainly the council's right. As individuals, you can do whatever you want. No one can tell you you can. You all have a voice, but as an order of procedure of maybe, do you want to have individually a conversation with staff, your manager, of like, hey, what do I need to know about this? Is there any landmines? What's your recommendation? Again, you're not asking for authorization. You can do whatever you want. And also, do we want to have a conversation through the mayor, potentially? Just so we're on the same page of what's happening. Because a lot of times, we're unique as a council. A lot of these items, you may have, when you were running for council, you ran on certain items of support or things you were against. But now when you're on this council, it's process and things go through boards and commissions. And I throw it out there of how you feel about that, how you want to operate, maybe informally as a council or formally with those types of requests. The other thing, item 4, there was a recent discussion at our council about open time. And so can we ask clarifying questions or can we make a statement as council or staff? And so the town attorney's here to kind of guide us through the Brown Act and anything related to that. One thing I'll also throw out there as a tool that I think we have in our toolbox is that the manager comments. And a lot of times we can move the manager comments right after open time. And sometimes those are things that I'm already working on as staff and I can give an update. And council may be on a board or in one of those meetings and can speak to it. And so there's some tools in our toolbox to think about with item 4. And the other one is, it just goes back to the work plan. Again, we're not changing the work plan today, but if it's something council starts to look at the things that we're working on and it's not what you thought you wanted to do, then just provide some direction and I'll come back to you on that. And also, as always, item 6, if there's anything procedurally you want to discuss amongst yourself, I just wanted to provide an open forum where you can speak to amongst the 5 of you on any changes or direction you want to provide. So with that, I turn it over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I guess we can begin first if there's any questions for Todd specifically, and then if there's nothing burning, I guess what I would like to do is turn it open for public comment. Nothing clears the room like a town councils and procedures discussion, I guess, huh? Okay, hearing none, then I'm just going to bring it back to the council. We're not voting on this. This is a discussion, so let's just have the discussion, ask questions, talk, and proceed
I would
that way.
propose, Mr. Mayor, we try to go through it in the order it's on.
I would agree.
That way we get
Yes.
it done.
Yes,
Instead of just
absolutely. So let's start with item 1. Thank you, Ted. Sloan. Draft of the agenda will be included as an item for discussion, and then we can add or subtract at that time. Is that something everybody's comfortable with?
I think this is a good method
Yeah,
because
that
it
makes
gives us
sense.
an opportunity to ask if things get put on a future agenda, and it allows us a forum to ask for that without violating the Brown Act, and it also kind of warns us not to violate the Brown Act because we're doing nothing other than flagging an issue we want on a future agenda. It seems like the right way to do it.
Okay. Anybody else?
And you're going to be including a copy of this with each of those drafts? Okay.
I think it sounds like we're all in agreement with Sloan on that. Okay, so that
By the way, if
takes care-
something got on this list for something I don't know about, Todd or Teresa or Mr. Mayor, somebody, let me know. I didn't know this was an issue, that's all.
Number one?
Yeah.
Oh. Todd put this together, so.
Is there an issue on number one or not really?
I think procedurally, we've struggled a little bit with certain items, so they've come to staff in different ways, and I think it's just a good reminder of process. You said it perfectly. I
Okay.
think it's a good
But
form.
my sense is that the agenda is primarily set by the town manager approving it with the mayor. But something that I introduced a few years ago and that I think I'm very fond of is to give the rest of us an opportunity to suggest other things. And also, the town at open time, or people send letters, or we receive communications. I didn't know what the process was to ask that we as a council consider this thing in the future. So my proposal was we have a proposed agenda. So in addition to what the general manager and the mayor think, we can also ask, hey, can we include the following? Could you schedule the following? Could you put it on the calendar so that you'll know? And then you can push back and say, we're super busy. And then we can say, this needs to be a priority. You know what I mean? So it just was like an opportunity to do that. But primarily, the protocol should be, in my view, Todd, you put it together and then make sure whoever the mayor is approves it. And Mr. Mayor, if you think anything else, then you just change it. And then that's generally what it's going to be. And maybe that item on the agenda, we go through in like 2 minutes. It's rare that we do anything other than say, this is one other thing, could you add? But if there's an issue there I'm missing, you should let us know.
That makes sense?
In the past, and we got away from it, I think the way our town bylaws were written, if somebody sent a request for something to put on the agenda, we had to put it on.
I kind of
And we-
vaguely remember
And we
that.
got away from that because it was pointed out that we could be barreling down with an appeal, a budget crunch, and then somebody'd want to bring something else in, and so we got away from that requirement.
So it was actually, I think both Todd and I made that recommendation to council, and the procedures were changed, that a member of the public can certainly write a letter to everyone, to each of you, to the manager, to suggest something, and can stand up here during public comment and request that something get put on the agenda. And then during the time on the agenda where you are talking about future items, it's well within your purview to suggest that a member of the public has asked for this. I support that. I'd like to see it put on an agenda. But if we give a member of the public the right to force something on the agenda, essentially one member of the public gets to trump the council priorities. And you've
Right.
worked really hard and made some tough choices about the kinds of things you want to see coming forward. And then, you've put some other things maybe in the back burner for another year, and then a member of the public would really be able to come in and trump council's will. And so it was my strong recommendation that process be changed to what you currently have. I do think it should be up to the council to determine what the priorities are, and then, of course, you do have appeals and such that come forward in the ordinary course that you also need to be able to fit into the schedule.
Okay. So I think we're all in agreement on this?
Yes.
Okay. Item 2, that we routinely receive requests to write letters in support of opposition to legislation and/or important issues, and staff needs clarification on how we handle that.
I mean, I have a recommendation in this regard, but I wonder if it's on here because you guys have, or Bob has something you wanted us to do.
No, go ahead.
So my suggestion is that the policy that we use on the legislative committee, because there's often last-minute requests like this from the League of California Cities or whatever, is that if the request is consistent, the letter that's requested or the position that's taken is consistent with something that we as a council have done in the past or approved, then it's within the judgment of the mayor to do it. Just do it. But that relies on the mayor to take it upon himself or herself, or whoever there at the time, to say if they're not comfortable with it because it's inconsistent, not necessarily what they personally believe, but whether it is consistent with the majority of what the council has already clearly decided in the past, they can just do it. The issue is, and I believe we have a procedure where, what if we get a request that is out of the blue that is not about something that we've ever like done before? And I think, Teresa, there's like an emergency meeting or something, or we can designate a subcommittee or something. I wouldn't feel comfortable delegating to two of us to make an emergency decision about something which we have not, as a council, like discussed before. I think then we need to have like an emergency meeting or something.
We have previously delegated to just two members the drafting of something, and then it comes back.
But then, and that's also because we've already kind of like talked about it. You know what I mean?
Right.
What if we get a letter tomorrow from League California? The city says you guys need to take a stand on water rights or something we haven't discussed. I'm just trying to make something up. I think isn't there a procedure where you can notice on like 24 hours notice an emergency meeting or something?
Well, an emergency is truly an emergency, but what you can do in 24 hours is a special meeting, which doesn't require any particular like catastrophic emergency. It just means that you're having a special meeting. You can do it on as little as 24 hours notice. The challenge is to, get a quorum here, and you publish an agenda, and you have to stick to your agenda as you do with any other meeting. So yes, there is an ability to meet on fast notice. The challenge is always really, getting at least three of you in a room at a time that staff can make it work.
So my suggestion is only those two options, which is option number one. If the mayor believes that it's something consistent with what we have already discussed and agreed as a policy, he or she can just do it. And then option number two, if it doesn't fit in that category, what is the term used, special meeting?
A special meeting.
But I think what's been proposed in the staff report here is, should we have an option C, which is in the gray area where do we want to have like a subcommittee to do that? I'm sort of agnostic or indifferent, whatever the word is. I don't care, whatever you guys think.
I would back up a step from that and say that in general, we belong to the League of Cities and we belong to the Legislative Committee, and we have representatives on both of those. And I think both of those organizations do a fantastic job of looking at upcoming bills and legislation and deciding what we should and shouldn't be interested in. And I think that should be the first cut, because we get a lot of requests to back stuff. And we could burn all of our staff's time just firing them letters. Oh, this looks great. This looks interesting. And then we would end up spending all of our time discussing that when we've got lots of other stuff to get done as a city. So I would say, if it's not coming through MCCMC or the League of California Cities,
it would have to be exceptional.
It would have to be an exceptional thing, yeah, for us to consider it, because I think it's just not a good way for us to spend our time or the staff's time. So that's my opinion.
Yeah. Personally, I don't know if I would support that approach. I definitely get what you're saying about we don't want to burn excessive amounts of our time or staff time or town resources, considering every frivolous, possibly request that might be sent to us. But I do think that the council should have some discretion in terms of identifying things that come from channels outside of MCCMC or the League of Cities that they might feel are important.
Don't leave out A-bag.
or A-bag.
No, we are going to get an A-bag.
Okay, yeah, so just my point is that I think I have a different standpoint than you on that, which would be that council members should have reasonable discretion to bring things that they would see as sound policies to.
I agree with Councilmember Beckman.
I don't think it's inconsistent. I might be getting muddled, guys, so I'm sorry. So the immediate issue is, do we want to authorize the mayor, or how do we want to handle requests to sign a letter to like somebody? And the easiest one is,
which, as you know, because you were the mayor, you get a lot of.
Yeah, I wanted to have like Donut Day in Corte Madera,
I mean,
but I didn't think that was cool, so I didn't do it.
I get them all the time.
But anyway, if the request is with enough lead time, then you can just ask Todd or somebody or the mayor to put it on the agenda, and when the normal way we figure it out, right? If you want to. But I didn't think that's what we were discussing. What we were discussing is, what if somebody asks you a request that is, you need to do it.
I think what Bob is recommending is that if the request does not come through the League of Cities or MCCMC Legislative Committee, that we simply not act on it, not consider it.
That would be my position, because again, our time is limited. We're here to work on town business. We have people who both belong to both organizations, who both do a great job of bringing stuff in. And what they do is they recommend stuff that applies, I know, to all the cities or a majority. And if we start doing this, I think we risk a situation where we spend possibly huge amounts of time considering all this stuff and also take up all kinds of staff time on letters or something that someone is personally interested in because they think it's a great idea.
So,
and I'm not being critical.
No,
I'm just saying we need to be really careful of our time and how we use the staff's time, because as we can see from this, we're already, overwhelmed trying to
one
get stuff
thing
done.
I will say, the beauty of that perspective, although there's a little bit of a counterpoint, the beauty of that perspective is that I found it's not unusual. I was grateful to have a policy or a reason to tell somebody, you know what, really only consider things in a very limited, narrow ways to do the larger letter,
Right.
if we have that established policy. But the proviso would be, I can imagine a circumstance, like somebody says something at open time, would you write a letter about so-and-so, which is not from one of those sources, but which, as I sit here, I'm kind of like, that's a good idea. Maybe we should do that. And are you, in that circumstance, Bob, would it be your sense that even then we wouldn't ask to do so?
I guess what I'm.
How about this?
I would like
Is
to
it too
have.
hypothetical?
I guess, yeah, that's pretty hypothetical, and I guess we should have some kind of flexibility. I just don't. I think, and I'm not being critical or offensive, but I think we all have personal agendas, and I don't want that starting to affect
I agree.
how we spend our time when we should be spending it on town business. And that is why we have people on MCCMC. Alice Fredericks has been on that thing since I started in 2007. She does a fantastic
Yes.
job. Nancy does a great job on the League of California Cities. They're looking at all this stuff and figuring out what we should be interested in, what we should be behind. And if we start evaluating this, I don't want to turn into Berkeley, right? Who starts, takes positions on all kinds of stuff. I mean, that's not a good use of our staff's time, and it's not a good use of our time.
So I totally agree with that. I would love to see the room for like I trust you guys to only bring things that are germane and truly important.
Well, you're our rep at
before
California
us.
for the league,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you see that stuff, and you're the one who brings it to us.
Well, I see the stuff from them, but
Yes.
but what I'm suggesting is that I trust you guys to bring stuff from outside of these two channels if it is truly germane and important.
And I'm trying to think of do we want to arbitrarily say that the two channels will sort of get a first pass, a presumption of relevance, but allow two council people, if they feel strongly that an issue should be debated? I don't know.
A bright line method is always easy to follow, but it doesn't always there's always exceptions. I don't know how to reconcile that. It'd be good to have a clean policy that says only under X and Y will we consider it. But it would also be good to have an exception in there somewhere.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to do that.
Teresa,
you're on.
Well, I have to say that even if you adopt a rule and we amend your rules that says we'll only ever consider things coming from these two groups, you are free to act otherwise. You're free to suspend the rule. You can vote to suspend the rule and do something different.
Upon a majority vote.
Upon a majority vote. So you can't bind a future council by adopting a rule that says we limit it.
It's not possible.
You cannot lawfully bind a future council.
We're not passing any rules or making
Right.
any
So-
rules or doing anything.
so I
We're
guess what
providing
I'm-
direction to staff.
So I guess if what you want to tell staff is, as a general matter, we really only want to consider these things, but if it's something that the town manager sees and thinks is, really important, then the town manager is certainly authorized to come forward with it. You could do something like that. And that gives a clear direction to staff that for the most part, you're only going to be looking at requests that come from these two organizations.
Is that good enough for you, Bob?
But I would want to hear what Todd thinks.
Yeah, I think there are outside sources we may want to consider. I guess two things. So one is like the scenario, one council member goes to me and says, I want to place this on the agenda. I say, okay,
You mean outside
Outside
the
the-
moment where it presents to the council?
Right, this
Okay.
is like tomorrow.
Yes.
One of you.
I call you up and say, I want to have jelly donut day.
Yeah, yes. And I say, okay, I hear
Which
ya.
would be an excellent idea, by
And
the
then
way.
I go to the mayor and I say, Sloan wants to have a jelly donut day. And Sloan says no.
Right.
Right? Nope, we're not doing that, right? And so then the question is, okay, it starts to cause problems when that continues to happen over
Yes.
and over. That's a concern to me that I just want clarification. The other one is if there's no rush, when we set the agenda, the draft agenda, any council member can always bring up a letter of
Right.
support for something. That's the forum. So I think we're okay 90% of the time. It's those 5 or 6 instances throughout the year where there's a time crunch. And so I just want you guys to think about it and, how do you want to proceed with that?
I'm going to call them emergency letters, okay, where you don't have time to run it through a formal council meeting. And what I'd be comfortable with is if the legislative representative, which could be you if it's a legislative committee, or you if it's league or ABAG, okay? And the letter signer, which would be the mayor or vice mayor, whoever's around, okay? And the town manager all can agree on it and go forward, okay? And, that,
Wait, one more time, Jim, please.
I guess what I'm saying is, if there's a letter that can't be presented before the council, but, there's sort of a deadline that you've got to get it submitted, and I'm going to call those emergency letters, that basically 3 people would have to sign off on it. Whoever signs the letter, which will be the mayor 99.9% of the time, the legislative representative or, delegate or whatever, so that could be either you if it's ABAG or you if it's a legislative committee, and the town manager, just so we have some independent perspective and use that as sort of the cut for whether we're going to do one of these emergency letters.
What if you have some bizarre fluke where you have a split council and the mayor and the representative who brought the letter are at odds with the majority of the council who is not consulted on the issue? Is that a problem?
Yeah, then we change our name to Novato.
But Jim actually makes a profound point, is that in my entire time here, we've had a remarkably collegial council. And most towns in Marin do, but not all. I'm comfortable just leaving it to the mayor, but it's up to you guys, whatever you want.
And, one reason why I said signer is if it turns out that for some reason the mayor cannot sign it, either from he's on vacation or he's sick or he's just not available or he just philosophically can't bring himself to do it, then you could try talking the runner-up signer, which would be the vice mayor, to sign.
I think that's sort of one of the prerogatives.
But if we do that, then the town manager's going to weigh in and say, hey.
See, that wasn't my thought at all. My thought was that if it's clear, then the mayor can just sign it. If it's not clear, then I think he or she has to let the rest of us weigh in.
So if that's the case, then I would agree with Todd's recommendation that whenever we do the upcoming agenda, the person bring it up and say, I'd like to put this on the
Yep.
agenda, and see what everyone thinks, if it's something they want to take the time and get staff to take time.
I think that's
Does that make sense?
Is that clear enough, or do we muck it up?
No, it's clear.
Well, one thing I want to warn everybody about is between now and June 30th, there, like on April 24th, there's probably a dozen housing bills that could seriously affect this town. And maybe we need to have sort of an informational meeting where we sort of talk about, okay, here are the, collection of housing bills that are going to be coming up. We like these bills, we don't like those, okay? We like ADU bills, we don't like it, so, sort of an ability to sort of air the views so the mayor can get a sense of where the council is and then be able to make, the emergency letter judgment call.
So that's actually probably the most important example that we've dealt with, and one that I don't know what the resolution is, but that's the problem we have. We can all foresee right now bills coming down from Sacramento, which will require a response in very short order, and the language of the bill may be changed 50 times between when now and when we have to make the decision. So in that instance, I think Bob should have, for this next year, whenever the term's up, the judgment to do as he likes about, as long as it's consistent with what we as a council has done. And Bob, if you're not comfortable that the position is clear, then I think it's up to Bob to instruct our town attorney or town manager to call a special meeting. Does that make sense?
I think that makes sense to me.
Makes sense.
The only caveat I'd have is.
With my position being, by the way, is I'm not going to take a position unless MCCMC or League of Cities wants us to take a position. I'm not, just philosophically, I don't think we should be spending our time trying to take positions on stuff.
Okay.
So, because it's just not, that's what we participate in these other committees for.
But I want two people reading the letters.
Okay.
Just from a proofreading style standpoint, the signer and somebody else.
Great, Jim. Thank you for volunteering.
I did want to say, just think about some of these bills. I don't think the league will take a position on certain
In which
bills,
case,
and
it's very clear the mayor doesn't have to do
Yeah,
jack.
we may not, but I also maybe, not just for, this council works really well together and to make sure we don't have division. I do think there's probably, throughout the year, 5 to 6 times we're in this emergency situation, and I don't see us holding 5 to 6 special meetings. And so I wonder, just as one last kind of shot at it for consideration maybe, and I know it's not clean, but when we talk about the draft agenda a lot of times, and it's something important to one of you, it's not always, it's at the end of the meeting, it's 9:30, everyone wants to go, and you don't get that full discussion maybe and consideration of the council at the time. It's happened in the past, it seems to me as an observer. And so and division can start, and I wonder maybe, to Jim's point of if we consider a committee, and we don't have to do it tonight, but we can come back to you and you can form a committee, and just those handful of instances throughout the year where it's the mayor, it's maybe your legislative rep and the League of California Cities rep, because those are the three. Either or, and you have 3 of you, you form a committee, you actually have an agenda, and you can put together a meeting instantly, and you, the 3 council members that are designated by the council as those reps.
I thought you couldn't do a committee with 3.
You can.
You can, actually, it would need to be 2. It would be 2. If you do 3, you have a quorum of council.
Okay.
But you could do 2 and make it a committee.
Right.
And then you could do, on 24 hours' notice, do a short agenda. But you're not then trying to pull all of you in on a special meeting about the scheduling.
Could you repeat that again? Would it be
It would be.
a special meeting of 2 people?
It would be a special meeting of your standing legislative committee, or whatever you want to call your committee.
And it
This
doesn't
would
need to
be-
it's ad hoc. Does it need to be noticed and all this? or-
It wouldn't need to be. I see this as a standing committee that doesn't meet very often. Ad hoc committee is a short-term, short duration, to deal with essentially like a short-term project. This would be something that would be ongoing. It sounds like it would only meet very infrequently, but you could do it on short notice. You would need at least 24 hours. It would need to be noticed. It's a Brown Act body, but you wouldn't be trying to pull all of you in on a special meeting, which was a much bigger lift, I think, for staff and for all of you.
And the head count would be 3?
I'm sorry. 2. I'm sorry, that was my mistake.
So it's
But
not a Brown Act
Councilmember Bailey, to your point, I think there could potentially be an instance where we've never discussed it as a council, and then I think those are a couple times a year. Those would probably be full. The group might go, no, let's have a special meeting of the full council. But I think there are even, there's just, to have a formalized procedure would be helpful.
Todd, the takeaway from me from what you were saying is that you don't want to encourage special meetings. I'm 100% with you. It should be a once in a blue moon thing.
Yes.
And I'm comfortable evidencing my own discouragement from having more meetings than is absolutely positively necessary.
Totally.
Okay. Anyway, I don't know. I feel like we've mucked it up and not clarified it. So the policy, as you understand it, I believe, is what?
So for right now, if I think a council member, if they want to bring something to an agenda, they can't go through the manager will go through the mayor to put it on the agenda. We can do that. If we have conflict there and the mayor doesn't feel comfortable, we can defer to section 7.3. It's the draft agenda conversation at the
Right.
next meeting. That's where we can discuss it.
And if we get a majority, then it goes on.
Majority.
And if not, then it doesn't.
And then I think right now, right now, it's just if we get something and it's an emergency, then it's
in the
through
judgment of the mayor.
It's the judgment of the mayor. And I think we'll be very conservative on that. If we think we haven't discussed that before and don't feel comfortable, then the recommendation is let's wait till the next meeting, or we can consider a special meeting. But it has to be very extraordinary.
So to me, that sounds perfect.
So can I just clarify something? So if I wanted to bring you like striped shirt day, then so I'd bring that to you. I'd email it to you, say I want this on the agenda. You would check with Bob. Bob would say that's stupid, and then you'd come back to me and say I think you're going to have to bring this up with the draft agenda.
That's correct.
Okay, yeah, that's
Makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm in favor of striped shirts, by the way.
That's fine. You
Not necessarily say it was stupid.
Only with polka dot ties.
I wouldn't blame you if you did.
Wearing a striped shirt.
No, it's plaid. It's different.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
Wait, our counsel is making a comment about something.
Okay. We'll come back.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay, so that, I think,
Thank you.
sort of
Three.
solves that one.
Interviews.
So item 3, council members routinely receive requests for interviews on town matters. Does the council wish to discuss a process or protocol to handle such a request?
And I'm just wondering, just if it's helpful to the 5 of you, again, this is your call, but if you get a request, if you're comfortable reaching out to the manager and just having a conversation, a lot of times I have background information just to provide you the full scope of, what the town is facing, my lens, whatever I can do to help you, and then from that point, you can, move forward with your decision making. Maybe even a second step of, again, you work together a lot, to just maybe even have a conversation with the mayor. There are some questions, though, if an email goes out to the 5 council members, to the town attorney, do we get into Brown Act issues if all 5 of you then follow up with the mayor, right? So the question is probably you need to work, if you're comfortable, just coordinating with the manager to get the information you need, and the manager can follow up with the mayor just to let him or her know what's going on. Hey, you have two council members are going to make a statement or whatever it is. Just some sort of informal process where we're communicating within the Brown Act.
I think that makes sense. I mean, we should, I think, all be allowed to talk to the press if we want to, but I think the most important thing is that we should talk to you first, right? Before you really talk to the press, just check in with you, because I have learned over the years, there are so many times when you know much more about what is going on that would really be helpful to know before you actually talk to the press, because you can get background information that will help you, be more intelligent in the way you respond. So I think that's a great idea.
In particular, if it's a television station wanting to come to each of us, like kids trying to triangulate their parents, to get separate opinions about an upcoming issue that hasn't been in front of us, as the television station tried to do on cannabis. My immediate reaction would be to let Todd and/or you be the only person to have that conversation if it hasn't come before us. If something has already come before us and we acted and we now have been a part of a vote, I don't know why we wouldn't, absolutely would defer. If it was something that I didn't feel confident I knew anything about, or even half the story about, I would definitely come to you, Todd. But for the most part, I would defer to, on a new issue, say, hey, you got to go through the right process. Talk to Todd Cusimano, number 1. Talk to the mayor, number 2.
And then Teresa and I actually spoke before the meeting a little bit about what you just said. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I would say that that in terms of speaking to the press, and I'm not talking about where each of you they're trying to divide and conquer ahead of time, but please keep in mind that when you have an appeal coming forward or an entitlement or anything like that, or if it's a legislative act that's linked to some sort of entitlement, like, for example, the AMCO situation where AMCO, excuse me, where you do have a zoning amendment that is linked to an entitlement, that there are due process issues at play there, that you need to be very careful about prejudging the matter. All of the instruction that you've been given before, you want to be able to come to this as an impartial decision maker. You do sit as in a quasi-judicial capacity. So wherever there's any sort of issue that's not purely legislative, I would discourage you from having an interview on the matter, because to do so puts you in the position of perhaps looking like you have prejudged a matter, even if you haven't. And it's really important to remember that you need to come forward and make a decision based on what is provided during the public hearing and not to have prejudged the matter. I'm happy to walk you through that if you find yourself in that position, but I just wanted to throw that out there.
And if they're talking to you before the meeting, they're going to want to know what you think. That's why they're doing it, so.
Good reminder. I have two comments to that. First one is, I think this is a burden of the mayor. The mayor's got to figure this out, whoever it is. That's like, they're obliged, I think, to respond to requests from the public. I know that from the press, I know that, and hopefully he or she is, diplomatic about it, as I know we all are. I know that the IJ reporters have told me on more than one occasion that the editors there instruct them to give the mayor of the town an opportunity to comment before they publish a story that involves our town. So that means anytime there's a story about Corte Madera, theoretically, Bob should be getting a call.
And I do.
Okay. So, and I think that's, good luck and God bless, Bob. I hated that stuff. So, we all enjoy a right to say whatever we like. It's just stupid. Don't be stupid. You know what I mean? Because if you prejudge it, then you can screw us all. And if you are just stupid and biased in the way you describe things, then there's an appearance of impropriety. And all those things are terrible. That's my own sense. Right?
You may notice I don't go quite.
Teresa, the only reason I'm pushing back a little bit is that I think there's a temptation among some attorneys to handcuff, to try to control in a way. And I believe that part of our responsibility as elected leaders is to have a voice and to let that voice come out. I'm reluctant to do so in the media, but I think that we can handle it. We just have to be cautious.
I would agree with you. So I do think part of your job certainly is to have your voice be heard, but in the context of a quasi-judicial matter coming forward, there is you're more than just a legislator. You're really acting like a judge. And so it's, if you just sort of visualize that you are actually almost putting on a robe when you come and sit down, I think that will probably guide your behavior. And if you have any questions, please do feel free to reach out. But so that's the piece I just wanted to point out. We're not just talking about ordinances that are coming forward that are detached from any sort of entitlement.
Anything else on that, or if we're all clear? Okay, then moving ahead to item 4, open time. And can council members make a statement, ask clarifying questions, or give direction to staff after a member of the public speaks on an issue?
Again, I think it'd be a good one for the town attorney and the council to discuss. Again, I think as one of the tools we have in our toolbox, again, is the manager comments that we can always move up after open time, and I can give an update. And I do feel like council can, because sometimes council members are involved in those meetings, can have a quick discussion of, hey, we are working on it, there is some follow-up. And so anyway, I throw that out there because it is tough sometimes not to be able to, on something that's contentious, to let someone know that we are working on it. And I just want the council to know too, as a matter of practice, whenever someone comes up in open time, I will give my business card and I'll walk outside with them after open time to tell them, this is what we're doing, we're working on it, call me tomorrow and I'll follow up with you. So I always do that as well as a point of practice, but sometimes a council member also may want to ask a question or say something, and I think it's a good kind of procedural conversation to have.
It is absolutely true that Brown Act does allow you to have very limited follow-up, particularly if you have a clarification question or two to make sure you really understand what the
He's
member
defined
of the
this term,
public.
just dropped on us.
Yeah, and again, we're talking about the public comment on items that are not on your agenda. Nothing I'm about ready to say would apply to an item that is on your agenda because you can freely discuss it because it is on your agenda. So this is for the part that you generally do upfront where there are non-agenda items. A member of the public will come and raise an issue that has nothing to do with anything else on the agenda. And what do you do from there? And certainly you can ask limited follow-up to make sure clarification, make sure you really understand what the concern is. You can ask for a quick clarification from staff on that issue. The tipping point, however, between doing that and staff providing more than the courts are comfortable with in terms of construing the Brown Act is quicker than you might think. This is an area where courts are pretty quick to find that staff has overstepped or council members have overstepped. So if you're going to ask for a quick clarification, it really should be very quick. It should be,
What did you mean when you said X?
What did you mean when you said X, or, ask the town manager a quick question that would require just a quick response?
Are we already working?
Isn't that coming forward in December? Yes. Or can she, town manager, can you work with the citizen to answer that question? Or can you provide that information to the citizen offline or something? And just quick direction to staff that doesn't really get into the meat of the substance. There have been times.
Any discussion or commentary by the council members about what was just said.
I totally agree with you. What a great point. I'm so glad you raised that. So I've been thinking that we should really put that on the agenda for next time because I feel passionate about that issue. I mean, that's the kind of thing that would get you.
Right. I think we get that. If you're done with that, though, there's a related issue which came up. I went to a meeting on Sunday with a bunch of mayors and council members from other districts, including our district attorney, and 2 members of the Board of Supervisors and council members from almost every town. This is that social justice thing. And there is a really hot issue that has come up in the last couple weeks at the Board of Supervisors, at Fairfax, and in San Rafael, which is people get up to speak and they refuse to give their name because they're not documented, or they're talking about an issue which inflames emotions, like potentially marijuana is one. And they don't want to reveal their name or where they live or anything else.
They don't have to.
There's an absolute law that says they do not have to.
They do not have to.
And so why do you both need to steal my thunder? That's where I was going with this.
Because she trained us well.
So I just wanted to make you aware that I just wanted to make you aware that although we've never really had that issue in this town, it's fair to ask them, but if they don't want to tell you, they don't have to tell you.
I never push anybody.
And then be aware this has caused real problems in other places, which we have not yet experienced. Maybe we never will. I don't know. Just wanted to make you know.
It's okay for you to ask them to state their name, but if they say I don't want to state my name, then they don't have to. The same with speaker cards. Some places the town does not. Requires a speaker card because you get so many, and that's how the clerk will then just call in order. And even there, you can't require it.
Okay. So where we stand is we'll retain the modified potted plant rule.
We can, I think understanding the courts construe these provisions to be pretty narrow, and so very limited follow-up, really to make sure you just understand what the person is talking about, and very limited follow-up with staff. I mean, there is some leeway in the staff report, but courts also, sometimes will look at, there are decisions where, a staff report went further than the court was comfortable with. And so, that puts you into Brown Act trouble.
So we can ask a clarifying question.
Absolutely.
And then I would just recommend for whoever is mayor, what I do all the time, is if you have any concern, look at Teresa. And if she's got it, she'll go.
No, I
will
will
know exactly what's going on and you can stop it.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What if the member of the public just got up and says one or two things that you just know are false, and they're here on our record now, and they're just wrong. They're just false.
That's a good example of not engaging.
Just not engaging.
That's when you that's exactly when you don't say anything.
You said, yeah.
It's going to drive you bananas, but for sure that's the right answer.
Exactly. You say thank you.
You know what's something though, which I have often done. You guys have
You're
seen me
wrong,
do
but
it.
thank
Is to
you.
alert people that
that
we
good
can
enough?
is to alert people that we cannot engage.
Yeah.
In other words, you should not construe our silence as either a disagreement or an agreement. It's simply a part of the Brown Act which precludes us from responding.
That's
Thank
why
you for your
I
comment.
I
See you
always
later.
try to read that at the beginning of public time and say we're not allowed to talk about items that are not on the agenda. So.
David, it's hard.
Really,
I know it is,
it's
but for
really
sure
the
that's the right
public's
answer.
time to bring up anything within your jurisdiction, and it's really your time to listen.
What's that?
It's not your time to provide your response, your substantive response. And the response the Brown Act allows is really just points of clarification to make sure that you're understanding it.
Got it.
Okay.
I'd move we extend it another half hour.
Oh, okay.
I think so, don't we?
We won't go half hour though.
We're not going to go half an hour.
Do you need a second?
We're wrapping
Move
up.
that we extend the meeting by a half an hour.
Yeah, second. Aye,
Councilmember Bailey. You can say
Yes.
no. Councilmember Beckman.
Yes.
Councilmember Kuhnhart.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Andrews.
Yes.
Mayor
Yeah.
Ravazio.
Yes. Okay, so I think that did number 4. Did we want to talk about the two? We're not going to talk about the work plan tonight.
No, work plan is just going to attach to the draft agenda, so. in
Is
the
there any
future-
other procedural items that we wish to talk about?
Number 5.
Has a decision been?
Slip the ADU ordinance, because there's all sorts of bills coming up in June that will make whatever you new ADU ordinance obsolete.
Yeah, exactly. It's a moving target.
Hmm?
Yeah, those are moving target boxes. That'll jump around on this thing, but
May I ask about the big blue bars? Has a decision been made that July 2 will not be a meeting and that July 16 will be a meeting? Has that been resolved? I mean, as it happens, my personal situation is that to attend my mother's celebration of life, I have to be gone on the meeting of the 16th, but I will be around on the 2nd and on the 4th of July parade. So if that's, so I'm just asking, is that a decision that's been made by somebody? Or,
We want to start thinking about making it now, so we can plan.
Sure. Let's put it on the agenda.
we'll put it on the next agenda. I think it's open, it's flexible. It's whatever you want to do, the 5 of you.
Okay, so it's going to go on the next agenda.
Thank you, we'll bring it up.
Okay. Let's get back to tonight's agenda. I think we finished 6B then. So let's go to the town manager report.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up. In open session at the last meeting, George Marsh brought up the issue of parking issues. Overflow parking from Redwood High School has become a big issue in a portion of Madera Gardens neighborhood. I just want to let the council know that I did follow up, as did the vice mayor, with a number of citizens in that neighborhood. And I met with Redwood High School, the principal, David Sonneheim, with George Marsh, our retired town manager, Jim Robinson, the police chief, Mike Norton, and Peter Brown, our public works director. Had a good meeting. We feel like there's some opportunities at the staff level to open up potentially 30 to 40 spots within Redwood High School, which I think will help both Corte Madera and Larkspur. I've also had discussions with the city manager in approaching a possible radius around Redwood High School of considering potentially permit parking and what that looks like, but we need to really work in tandem with Larkspur. And so I have some good follow-up information. Mr. Marsh and Robinson and myself, we're going to hold a neighborhood meeting for Madera Gardens, probably at the community center in the next month, to give them an update of here's the issue, what have you been seeing, here's what we're working on, and really get some of their feedback of potentially red curbing and how they feel about a permit kind of ordinance. And if they're supportive of that, I will take that information back to the council for consideration. And so we have a process in place. I feel like we can get to the end of the school year. Any permit parking would take place the following school year. but I feel like we have some things to work on. The school is very open to helping and working with both the city and town, and so I'll give you updates as I will the neighborhood moving forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Council reports.
I gave my report out of secret.
Eli?
No report.
Okay, I watched the Flood Control Board. They're working on their capital budget for this upcoming budget cycle. Let me see. Parks and Rec is discussing their budget. One thing, Prop 68 grants, which is basically you fill out an application and I guess you get 200,000. Those are due by June 3rd, so we need to make certain we get those applications in. And then I attended the Legislative Committee meeting. There are at least 100 housing-related bills trickling through the Senate and the Assembly. The key ones are SB 50, which is Senator Wiener's bill, SB 4, which is McGuire's bill. Both of those will be discussed in committee on April 24th. The language is in flux. They're going, they move language from one bill to another? Will they in some way get so that the definitions in the bills are in sync with one another in case they both pass? So that's going on. Also, there's going to be a fair number of ADU ordinances. It looks like a common thread on the proposed ordinance is A, the owner occupancy, they want to do away with it, and 2, the parking requirements want to be done away with. So those are sort of, but, as I said, there's 100 housing bills and they're sort of mix and matching language. So Adam, it's going to be busy in the fall.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. 2 things. We had office hours with Dennis Rodoni on Friday afternoon.
Oh, how'd that go?
Went great. Small crowd, probably 8 or 10 people. Eli was there, but very cordial, very nice. And as I said at the beginning of the meeting, I see Dennis more in 2 months than I saw his predecessor in 10 years.
I totally agree.
So
it's
great.
important to keep that. I'm glad you did that, and you too, Eli.
He's involved, and he pays attention, which is great. So it was really good. And then also just want to remind everybody, we have the MCCMC meeting coming up next week, and we are doing Wednesday.
It's here.
Awesome.
It's here in the community center, and we are doing a panel on vaping, which we're doing it with the schools.
Such a good topic,
This is
Bob.
the Mary Jane Burke and I have been working on this with a bunch of other people, and it's going to be to talk about vaping and what towns can do and to help with the problem, which is what we've already done, which is pass the flavored tobacco ordinance. So, which would be consistent with the county. So hopefully that'll be a good meeting and a good presentation. And I am, as you're probably not surprised, working really hard to make sure that our presentation is short, concise, and informative. And does
It's a
not
great
go on.
topic.
So I think it'll be good. Okay, review the draft agenda for May 7th, 8A. Anybody have any comments on that?
Please. May I?
Yes, please, go ahead.
I mentioned last time that there have been a number of fair housing improvements made in the law in the Marin County, and there are a couple that we have not taken up, although we did take up and pass the resolution declaring this month as Fair Housing Month in our town. And to make our housing regulation more consistent with others, there's a few things that we could take up. They've already been drafted, they've already been adopted by a few other parts of the county, including the county itself, and I hope we could put that topic on the agenda.
So you would like to add to this agenda that we review our fair housing ordinances?
That we consider making a few very small adjustments and improvements in our fair housing ordinance, which is otherwise very good.
I have no problem with it going on the agenda, but should it run through the planning commission first, just from a procedure standpoint?
I would, that would be I think that's a really good
They'll,
suggestion.
yeah, they'll for sure, just because.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it needs to go through planning.
But if you
so-
could send me a copy of the text, I'd appreciate it, just so I can get up to speed on the issues.
I definitely would only do this in the full light of day and with the full collaboration of the rest of the group. Second is that, quite independent of the public speaker tonight, I mentioned last time that, or 2 meetings ago, that San Anselmo passed a nifty electric vehicle plan, and I'm hoping that we could take up our own version of that, which should depend largely upon simply copying what San Anselmo and City of San Rafael are doing in the EV promotion area. And actually, I think that could be consistent with what some others are doing in the county.
So I totally agree with that, but Todd, tell me, how complex is it to tee that up?
Well, again, nothing is a copy and paste on ordinance, respectfully. I'll tell you that, yes, 70%, 80% is done, and so there's a process. Legal has to get involved, and so, that's going to take us a few weeks. If the council would like it, we can look at it over the next 6 meetings, see how we fit it in. We're about to go into, we have an appeal, we have the cannabis ordinance,
Yeah.
and you
It's a
have
busy
2 full
it's a big-
meetings
yeah.
of budget.
No, that's why I asked the
So
question.
I think right after we get through the budget, we could certainly, over that span,
Do we
bring
need
that to
to
you.
include any money?
I don't see it as difficult.
Do we need to include any money in the budget to implement?
You will be, so something that'll actually correlate with what Councilmember Kuhnhart is talking about is within this next budget, you will see the request for purchase of up to 3 to 4 fully electric vehicles and 4 to 6 charging stations. And so that will be an request, which kind of starts to go in line with what we're talking about with San Anselmo. So yes, I think the timing is right in there. So over the next 4 to 6 meetings.
Beautiful.
I can do that.
How does that tie in with the climate action plan? Because I know EVs are addressed in there.
Yeah, it fits. I mean,
Okay,
it's
yeah, no,
consistent. It's not.
is it a ton? Well, it doesn't matter. Anyway, sure, yes.
Next one, which I have previously talked with one other member of the council on, which is the concept that PACE funding is allowed in the county, but in Corte Madera and Ross, there's only one of the 7 accepted providers that is accepted within our jurisdiction. It's a simple resolution that says, let's open up our town to the same exact list that has been vetted by the county. And there's about 7, and they're published on the county's website. And this under the energy efficiency and building regulations and funding. It's just making ourselves consistent with the rest of the county on PACE, property assessed clean energy bond funding as an option for people. Just simple, really.
Any,
And I don't, this is not an emergency. I'm not saying we have to do it next.
is there any further discussion?
It's a little more complex. You should read the meeting minutes from when we considered that, David, which was years ago. It was it? Jesus, nice work, Rebecca.
That's incredible.
That's amazing.
Moving over there.
I was here.
It was before I was on council.
Holy smokes.
I was at that meeting, and it was.
Did you see Michael and I battle at that meeting? So anyway, it was a compromise position, and I don't have any problem putting it on the agenda to reconsider that.
All right.
Okay, so, but again, it sounds like it's not time sensitive, so it's a whenever we can get around. Whenever we can get around.
Work with
get
you.
it on the agenda. Okay, anything else on the comments on the agenda? Okay, so it sounds like we're okay with the agenda, which
Oh, did
means-
you were going to put up the buy clean? Did that survive on the draft agenda?
My understanding is that is working its way through.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that piece. What was?
Bike lane. So, well, okay, so I think that was probably part of what precipitated our discussion about procedures, is that I had been brought by, I think, the Sierra Club, like a draft bike lane ordinance that would basically just say that the town of Corte Madera, when it procures stuff, will do it in the most environmentally sustainable way that is, like, cost feasible. So I brought that to Todd, and then I think that's kind of part of what triggered his concern about, are all these things flying at him from different directions, and what's the process there? So I don't know where that stands, especially in light of now what we've discussed. Yeah.
So we have some purchasing policies, and that was one of the questions with Council Member Beckman was, do we want to make an action? Does the council want to make a statement, or is that something that certainly the staff can do as a policy? And we can put that into written policy, and I felt like that's something we're already working on as a staff to do by written policy, and it's not necessarily where we have to pass a resolution amongst the council members. It's something by practice we work on, but it's something certainly, if the council wants to weigh in and, pass a resolution, we can certainly do that. But right now, where I left it with Councilmember Beckman was staff is internally we're talking about that already. And I think there's a lot of good policies and practices. This was a mandate amongst state agencies. And so what we thought is we'll look at that as a policy among staff and incorporate what we can and report back to Councilmember Beckman. I didn't see it as a council item at this point.
Yes,
but
sorry, I forgot how. Yeah, that's.
But I'm certainly happy to do that, at a later date. But right now, I think we have a few months to kind of work through it as staff. But it is a good practice.
I think it's a good practice.
Absolutely.
And I think we should do it, but I think that illustrates exactly what we were talking about earlier. To me, to have time, the staff spent on putting that together and putting it on an agenda and having a discussion about it is just unnecessary and not prudent and not a good use of our time. So, no offense.
No,
We have a
taken.
disagreement on that.
None taken.
But I think it sounds like we can do it anyway. And
Yes,
to me-
no, and if
because
we can do it without
That's exactly the
wasting
kind of
time,
thing
that's
we
great.
can get. We can get sucked into 100 of those a week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literally. I mean, and it's just not a good use of our time. We just need to be really smart about how we approach stuff and what we spend
No,
time on.
to clarify, I'm very glad that this can be done without
Okay.
being an
Now,
agendized
the
thing.
the last thing that is going to come back, I'm not putting this on our agenda, but it's going to come back to us, and that is the wildfire hazard warning notice that's going to be going out to a bunch of people on or around May 1st, talking about defensible space and trees that you need to cut. This will be something that will come back and will involve all of us, because people around us are going to say, "What are you doing? What do you mean?" And I am.
You want to add it to the agenda?
Well, I think it would be prudent if we added it to the agenda, because I bet we're going to get some people coming in and reacting to it.
Do it in terms of an information item.
It might be good to have maybe the fire chief. I would personally, as a Wooey area resident, I would love to see the letter that's going to go out to people on this topic before it gets put in printed ink. Just because I might be able to be helpful, having for 22 years listened to this particular urgent issue on the hillside. And I'm happy to help. If it's not already printed up, in 3 colors.
We'll agendize it at the next meeting, because going in line with this topic without getting into it too much is the letter is going out, so I'm happy to, just timing wise.
I think I already got the letter.
Yeah, I think it's too late.
Mine
There's
came
this,
last week.
there's this letter saying it's coming, but there's property owners will be getting a particular.
Yeah, so the letter within the last week the letter is going out before the next meeting. I'm happy to distribute it amongst the council members, but again, not to have a conversation amongst the council, but to get any feedback from you straight to me on that, I'd be happy to facilitate it. I'll also tell you that there's an agenda item that'll probably be coming to you next meeting with a budget adjustment of $200,000 of the sales tax monies, because what we've identified within this WUI in support of that letter is that we need to help the neighbors clear vegetation. And so what we're going to do is we're going to actually do the work. We've submitted a grant. We won't know if we have the grant until the end of fire season. And so if we get that grant, we can be reimbursed, but I just don't feel comfortable waiting another year. And quite honestly, I think there'll be 15 residents. We've already been working with them over the last 2 years that will actually have to abate their property. I think amongst the chipper program and the sales tax monies, if council approves it at the next meeting, we'll be able to facilitate the clearing of properties for the residents. So I think it's a good conversation to have at the next meeting. And again, I'm happy for the council members to review anything we send out and get feedback for that. So, because I think it's a good story for the community.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
So.
Anything else on the agenda? Okay, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much.